Who's had that happen to them? Yeah, a bit of a shocker, eh? And if anything, you're a bit of a shocker when that piece of wood goes flying. You say, what the heck happened? So never, in any wood machine that we have, never start the machine with a piece of wood up against it, okay? Maybe you can get away with it with a sander at the very least, but I think use your imagination. Every other thing, you wouldn't start up your miter saw against a piece of wood, would you? You've done that, some of you have done that. Yeah, you learn quickly, so please be aware of that, okay? That's an important factor. Do not force feed your router in any situation. So if you're busy moving, okay, if you're busy moving down and there's a little bit of a resistance, don't force it. Rather just come back, pull off the piece, switch off, and have a look and see what's going on. There could be a knot or a branch or something underneath it that's now changing things. The sound's changing and it's becoming a bit more difficult to go through, okay? Because you can't always see knots in wood. They're sometimes inside the wood, okay? And maybe come out on the back end and you can't see it. All right, so from your perspective, it looks fine, but then eventually you're going to get hold of it as you go in with the router. Okay, so be careful of things like that. So don't force it. If it feels a bit hard, don't force it. Another thing to help you out, make sure your base plate is always cleaned, okay? I have those sponge sanding blocks. So I normally take one that's a little bit used and worn down, and then I normally just rub my base plate, because sometimes it picks up little burrs and snags and whatever as it's gone over maybe wood or a branch or something or a knot in the wood, then it tears that plastic plate. Just kind of smooth it down and it makes it a little bit easier to move. Do a dry run. Walk across your wood to feel if there's anything that's going to cause resistance. Some guys I know, they'll put wax on the bottom of the base so they can actually move it easy across the table. But normally you should have finished your sanding. You should have taken up to 120, 180 grit. So it should be pretty flat and smooth. And then when you put your router on it, it should be fine for you to move across. So there's no real reason. I don't understand the waxing part, but some guys apparently do. And they say, move smoother. So, okay, good. I've not tried it, and I wouldn't advocate it either. Sometimes it worries me if you're not using the right type of wax, it could embed on the wood. When you put your finish on, then you get fish eyes, so it doesn't stick properly, okay? So I stay clear of that. Okay, switch the router off immediately at the first sign of any unfamiliar noise or any problems or anything that you're experiencing. If you hear that the router's sound has changed, just pull it back, switch it off, and check what's going on. Sometimes you're busy routing, and then you'll see that a slither, as you're going this way, say the grain is running towards me, and you're busy going this way, it might splinter a piece off. Then it gets caught inside that base plate area, and it makes a little bit of a noise. So then you don't know what's going on. So stop what you're doing and then have a look and see. And then you'll see this little piece of wood is stuck in there, and that's what's making the noise or causing a problem. So pay attention to the sounds. I've mentioned that from the get-go. And then maintain your router equipment diligently. So it's easy to fall into a habit of when you finish, you just put stuff down and walk away. Okay, and you go on to the next thing. That's not the way to do it. You should really, when you've finished working for the day, it's a habit you should form. Clean your floor so that you don't slip on it and break your neck or arm or whatever. And clean your router off so it's ready for the next day. And by doing that, when you clean it off and dust it off, and you take a damp cloth and give it a quick wipe, you'll be inspecting it at the same time to see if there's anything wrong. Wipe the cable down. If something snags, then you know that your router snagged the cable and you need to get that problem sorted out. You understand? So don't neglect things. I've been into shops that are scary. I think there must be some species living in all that sawdust. And I'm not kidding you, sawdust has been about that high. And they've just merely pushed it to the sides. They've got a little pathway that they walk to the router table saw or whatever. Those of you that have been to my shop's disorganized like anything, but it's clean. I think that's as much as I can say about mine. You're not going to slip on anything and hurt yourself or whatever. Okay, so please do look after your kit, okay? Are there any questions? Anybody? All right, so there's a router. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so we'll cover that, but yes, you're 100% correct. The smaller you, so the rule of thumb is, you know, everything's in thirds in woodworking. You've got a 18 millimeter thick board. Where should you put the screws in? Well, you should go in, or you want to make a mortise. The mortise should be a third of that. You know, so you're 6 millimeters on the side, 6 millimeter side, 6 millimeter mortise. So everything's in thirds. So having remembered that, you shouldn't go deeper than 3 millimeters at a time on a cut. Does that make sense? That's a reasonable bit to take. I mean, some of the routers, for the most part, the Bosch is the sweetest toy ever. Hey, gosh, this is a nice toy. I'll go through it with you and I'll talk about it. This is a fantastic toy. Some of the turret stops are 4 millimeter. Okay, so that's really taking it to the next level where you're starting to go into the area of causing burn and hard to push through and all that kind of stuff. This one's a standard 3 millimeter that you set on each step. So these are quite good. So I would say 3 millimeters is a good one to work with. Normally what I would do is, if I'm going to do an edge, just to give you a quick, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but it's worth mentioning. If you do a round over, and especially when you're working with oak, you guys know that when you've gone down, it's left burn marks, where you've slowed down, especially to when you get to coming off the board, and then when you make it around the corner, you get burn marks on that thing, and you look at this and you say, oh gosh. So the trick in that one is, if you're doing 3 millimeter cuts, then all you do is take if you've got a drill set, take set your 3 millimeter, and then lift it with the column lifter, okay? Put the little 1 millimeter bit underneath this pin, so you can raise it up by 1 millimeter. Then go and take your cut. You've got 1 more millimeter to go down. Then go down that 1 millimeter, and then you're more confident, and it's much easier. So then you just put it down, and you walk it quickly. Then there's no burn marks on it at all. Go around the corner, no burn marks on it at all. So you now don't have to sit and sand all that stuff out. Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, just wondering the burn marks as a result of not moving the tool fast.
Combination of things: speed of the bit, speed of you, and the wood. Now you're fighting 3 things, 3 variables. If you know how to program or do maths, you're going to know that that's a bit of a difficult one. Eh? 1 variable is what most people can deal with. So yeah, you're up against 3 odds. All right. Good. Okay, so that's not what we're going to be talking about. So it's the wrong class for you, my mate. Is that your kid as well? No, oh, he's kind of sneaking in there with the family.
No, my dad.
Who's your dad?
He was the vice of other shop.
Oh, okay. All right, do you know what that is?
No idea.
All right, that was invented. There was a time where woodworking tools went through quite an evolutionary phase, okay? And it was a precursor to a lot of the tools that we have today. So in particular, this is actually a router, believe it or not, a router table that's pedal powered. And this comes in from the 1980s, late 1980s. And I saw this machine at one of the museums in, I think it was in Wetter, somewhere in Germany. And it has a bit, it's actually quite a weird looking bit with cutters at the top of it that are bent over. And that's how they would cut it to form the Roman ogee or whatever you want on the edge of a table. That's what they would use. So the guys would sit there and pedal this. And now there was a whole lot of these machines. There was a pedal saw, there was a pedal jigsaw, there were some other machines, I'm trying to remember what they were, but all pedal driven. And this particular company was instrumental in setting these things up. So during the load shedding period, I think if they brought that back, we would have been okay, and a lot fitter, I think. Eh? All right, so a little bit of two things there to kill 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing. Okay, so you would have that. So there we go. That's the kind of the first start of all of this. Okay. All right. So how about this? This is the Kelly portable router. Okay. It was the first electric router that was designed. I want you to read that advertisement, and I also want you to look at the router. There's something actually quite interesting about it. Can they get to see the slide?
Yep.
Oh, is it? Good.
There's a zoomed-in shot on the TV itself.
Oh, okay. All right, anything there that takes your interest? Anything? Nah, come on.
2 cutters.
Yeah, 2 cutters. So it's a twin cutter. All right, because in those days they used these twin cutters for the dados that they used to make. So that was automatically spaced. It's got twin cutters. I've never seen a modern machine with twin cutters on it. But it's a fantastic idea. Imagine if you could open up the cutters, you could put 2 cutters in to do something on a piece of wood or whatever the case may be. Gosh, that's taking it to the next level. But anyway, it's electric, okay? Manufactured and produced by these guys, shipped on 30 days approval, so you could take it, test it, and if you weren't happy with it, send it back within 30 days. Festool? Yeah, okay. All right. So, yeah, what's interesting though is, besides what they've set you there, I mean, that's par for the course, we know that. And does it with all the perfection and uniformity of a machine over handwork. Okay? Here's the interesting part. Operates on the bench with either 1 or 2 cutters at high speed. It does the work so smoothly that hand finishing is unnecessary. How many of you guys, after you've routed, are actually sanding what you've routed? Come on, tell me. Hey? Why? Once you've finished routing, you should be finished. That's it. Nothing more to do. Nothing more to see here. Let's move on. What are you up to that you're doing that? So then there's something wrong with your bit, or the speed, or the direction of the grain on the wood. You're not reading things properly. So, yeah. But there we go. That's the ad. I like that part. Does the work so smoothly, hand finishing is unnecessary. That's what you want, eh? Okay. So, all right, that's where we started. This is where it all started. Okay, so now we're at this point. So the different types of routers. So there's 2 types of routers. It's the plunge router and the fixed base router, okay? So I don't have a fixed base here with me, but I can go through and show you. So there's a fixed base, plunge, fixed base, plunge, plunge. Good old Triton, eh? Best place for that router is under a router table, eh? The best one ever. And if you can get the big boy, I think that's a 2,400, eh? Yeah, the big one. That one goes underneath your table. It's the best router for your table, a router table that you're going to ever get. All right, then again, plunge base, fixed base, fixed base, plunge base, fixed base. Nice fixed base, eh? Nice handles like these ones here. Festool, okay, plunge, and then plunge and fixed base. Okay, yes?
Why would you say that it's the best router for a table?
It's got the power, it's got the mechanism, because you've got a little winder. You can put a little winder in it. If you make a hole through your router plate that you've attached it to, and you take that little winder they give you in the box, you can put that in and to wind the router up and down to set it. Whereas if you used any of these, you're going to have to get underneath the table and then turn the little adjustment screws to try and lift it or so and put it down. Also, it's got a fantastic vacuum extraction that on both parts. So there's 2 parts that you can extract, from the top and from the bottom. So it gets the dust out of there. That's another nice thing about it. And it's got the speed and the torque to work through whatever you give it. It really works well. I have one under my router table, and that's where it stays. I wouldn't put it anywhere else. Okay, so they're nice toys. You can still get them. I actually just sold my second-hand one off for next to nothing to somebody, which they put into a router table, and yeah, best thing. So if you can find one, that's where it should go. Okay, that's where it belongs, underneath the table. Okay. But one of the nice things. So like I said, there's 2 types, plunge and fixed base. Fixed base means that, you know, once you've set it, there's nothing you can do. You set the depth, and then you do whatever you need to do. You can't twist or change anything. On these boys, plunge means that you can release the button, and then you can plunge. Okay, so you fire the machine up, and then release it, and then plunge into your work, lock it, and then you carry on. Okay, these guys, you have to introduce it to the wood and then carry on. So a little bit more of an issue with that. Sometimes you don't get accurate cuts when you do the start cut. Okay, so that causes a bit of grief. These are more, in the modern age, these are more suitable for edges, doing roundovers on edges and little rebates on an edge when you're going to put a backing board or whatever in place. Then these are nice little toys to work with, or freehand routing, or maybe for marquetry or whatever. Then these are good toys to work with. But the plunge one is the one that we would use for all the other work. Okay, all right. Okay, so there's the different ones that are out there, and I think you can see, or you have seen most of them. All right, so there's the fixed base and plunge routers, as I've just described. Now, Bosch came out, I have one similar to this, but mine is an electronic one, electronic readings and stuff like that. It's the nicest machine ever. Gosh, you put that machine on the table, you want to do a radius on a corner, you actually plunge, and then you take the cut, and then and the vacuum extraction is also, it's just amazing. So you take the cut, and then you kind of think to yourself, is this thing doing something? But you follow through, and then you switch off, lift up to check if it actually did something, and it's made the cut. So it's that nice, that comfortable, not that noisy, It really does the job. So it's worth investing in something like it. It just makes the work such a pleasure, okay? It's really something nice to have on hand. All right, these machines are variable in many respects. You know, it's difficult because when you first buy your first router, you always buy these little cute ones, hey? I mean, I think everybody bought a little cute handheld palm router like this. So you start off with this, but this is a 1/4 inch and it can't do anything more than that. Whereas this toy over here is fully capable of going from, now listen carefully, 6mm, 1/4 inch, 8mm, 10mm, 12mm, and 1/2 inch. It'll take all those collets for all the different diameter types you have for router bits. So generally speaking, in this country, we are a 1/4 and 1/2 inch country, okay? But thank you, Festool. They have brought in the 6, the 8, and the 12, okay? Just to throw it into the mix. So now you want to get a particular bit. You see the shape and the pattern of the bit. You try and trace it, and you find out that Festool's got one. Now you've got to go and get a 12mm bit or a 6mm bit to take the Festool bit into your router. Does that make sense to you, or do you understand? So, okay. There's a website called, believe it or not, Wonky Donkey. As I've said it, as you spell it, Wonky Donkey. And it's a UK website. It's owned by the company called Trend. And they are part of the company that manufactures probably about 80% of all the router bits in the world. Okay? So if you go up to Wonky Donkey and you're looking for a particular bit, you will find it there. If it exists, you can go and track it down. They'll give you the name of what the part is or the bit is. Then you can go search obviously by that name and find out who's got the bit. Okay? I mean, in South Africa, we've only got Protec that supplies router bits to us. So don't come and tell me about Talkcraft. Talkcraft gets their stuff from Protec, okay? So Protec is the only one that comes into this country. All the other stuff are imports from all over the place. So Whiteside or Trend or whatever you do, or Bosch. Bosch, for example, the bits from Bosch, just to give you an idea, Bosch owns Freud. So Freud make the bits that they supply to Bosch. And Freud make the bits that they supply to all the other companies that are out there, okay? So it's a bit of a little tight family, okay, for the most part. Yeah. Okay, so the fixed base, so the question is why they're both the same? Yes, they are, because the spindle is identical. So what happens is when you buy the kit, you will get both these components loose and one spindle. And then what you can do is you can take this spindle out and put it into fixed plunge base or into fixed base. So the question as to why the two. So for the plunge, that's clear. You want to plunge, plunge, plunge for different things as you're doing. Maybe you want to do an OG around the table, and the table's 20mm thick. Then you need to take a couple of 3mm cuts as you go around, because if you have to do it in one shot, it may shred the wood and tear it, whatever the case may be, and you're not going to get a good-looking OG on the end. So that you'll use for plunging. So plunging is when you want to go in increments into the wood. The fixed base is where you would do something like, for example, if you want to do a rebate, you may, or you want to use a particular bit, like a dovetail bit, for example. I'm just giving you an example. So what you would do is you would set it to a fixed depth, okay? Start at the edge of your piece of wood, and then you're going to do a two-step. You're going to do the first step with a straight bit, and you're going to make a groove with a straight bit to remove some of the material. Then the next step is you'll put a dovetail bit in there and then do the same thing and plunge to that depth. Because remember, you can't vary depths on a dovetail. You've got to do it one cut. So the first cut is to make a channel to remove as much waste as possible. And then the second step is put the dovetail on, and then there's no plunge. You go straight in and then cut the dovetail. So it's a two-part cut. That's it. And that's the reason why you would use something like a fixed base. So for rebates, for dovetail, on ball sliding dovetails for tabletops and stuff like that. That's where it comes into play. Or anything that requires a fixed depth that you need to work with, okay? The base is also nice. It's not they may be a little bit bigger than that, but because it's lower, the center of gravity is also lower, so they feel more comfortable to work with as well. But you can't tweak or adjust. You can, but it's not meant for fine tweaking and adjustment to make any cuts or whatever the case may be. Does that make sense? No? Yes, no? Yeah, you can. No, you can. There's no doubt. But the thing is that your center of gravity might be higher there, and you might end up with a bit of a wobble. So you don't want to have that when you're cutting these. So if you understand what I'm saying, there's a thing called a dovetail groove on a table. You do it on the cross end. So especially when you're doing breadboard ends, some guys will do it with a dovetail so that the wood can move inside that dovetail groove. You don't want to have any calamity that happens there with a slight little nudge, then this thing tips and then it makes a skew line or something like that. And invariably this is what happens here because you don't have that control. This one gives you better control. Nice handles, lower down, center of gravity down. You can hold it properly and then do the job. I think you need to try to understand what I'm saying because some days I say, you know, I'm too lazy. It's easy to swap it out, but I'm too lazy to do that. And then seriously enough, I take the cut and I say, oh gosh, why don't I just swap it out? Because now I've messed the whole thing up. So then I've got to cut that piece out, put an inlay in there, and then redo it again. And then the client says, but why is the wood color different? I say, no, I thought it would look different. It's a nice feature. You know, it was me that messed the thing up, but because I was just lazy, okay? So that's the reason. I think but it also says the other way around. You wouldn't use this for the edge of a table. You could. That's ideally suited for it because you can hold this. But again, the center of gravity, if you put this on the edge, you can see it'll tip because it's off the center of gravity. If you can put a nice little thing here that you can hold there and then move it around, so when you hold that, it doesn't tip off, then you're fine. Because this is a laminate trimmer is the other name they give this, to trim laminate. Okay. Okay, I hope I answered your question. Cool. Any questions there from internet world? No questions? Say again?
I said he was just have lots of tools.
Oh, some of us do have. Hello, Isan.
So hypothetically, I've got both those wash machines, right? The handheld trimmer and full big one, right? What would be the best one and why to put on the table?
Under the table?
Yeah.
If you had which ones?
If I had both of them.
Oh, okay, so good question. If you had both of these, that one.
No, the ones on your table.
Oh, on my table, to put under the table? Yeah. None. I wouldn't put those under the table. Not these. Unless you want to have a small little cute little router table for the small little cute things that you're doing, yeah, they make one of those, okay? This under a table, out of these three, but expensive to put under a table. Okay, if you ask me out of these three, I'll put that one under the table, okay? Look, in fact, you could put any one of them under the table, okay? If you're, yeah, I would rather go and shop. I would go and shop for a Triton. I don't know how it's happened, but Vermont, they brought in, I was going to say thousands, probably, of Triton routers that they were getting rid of for, well, they weren't selling it for stupid money. It was quite expensive. I think it was about 8,000, somewhere around there. You can have a look if there's anything here, but those machines are perfect for under the table. You take the spring out of the, it's got a spring in there. You take that spring out, put it upside down. Now there's nothing to fight you. You plunge it, you take the little handle, you put it in. It's got a little handle that you can stick in through it. There's a hole inside that plate. So you make the same position hole, and then you can put it in, catch it, and you can lift it and lower it to exactly the height you need. So that would be the best one to put under the table at the cheapest price. You can go buy a UJK lifter, and I think those lifters, you guys have looked at it. What are the lifters now on UJK? 10,000, 15,000 for a lifter? Just the lifter. I mean, that's like crazy money, eh? Or the Incras, 15, 20,000. You know, whereas that comes in the box and you can get going with it. So something to think about. But yeah, you know, if you want to set something under the table, if you've got a kit like that, then that would be the best one for under the table, okay? Because it's got a nice base that you can come. So some guys are clever. They've got that one under the table and they use that one for everything else. So all they do is they just take the spindle out whenever they need it. So they do that as well. Okay, yeah, Herman.
Maybe 40-inch and half-inch bits. Do you have to change the collet in those?
Yes. So whenever you have the diameter of a bit change, so in other words, I'm going to go through it with you. 6, quarter inch, 8, 10, 12, and half inch. That's 6 collets that you would need to purchase. Okay? So the Bosch will allow that range. I can't vouch for the other manufacturers because I don't really use their products. I use this one. So this one is a quarter inch. So basically when you buy, you need to buy the half inch, the top one. So this is a half inch router. This one is a quarter inch. It won't take a ½ inch. But this one will take the 6, the 1/4 inch, and an 8 will go into this one. Okay, it's the biggest that would fit in there. But no, the others, I think this one is a ½ inch, if I'm not mistaken.
The collets come with the actual unit itself.
Yeah, I think so in the case of a Festool, you probably get the 6 and the 12. Or you might get the 1/4 inch and the ½ inch. So it depends on what you get and where you get. But you're not going to get all of them, no. So basically, if you bought that, all you're going to get in it is a ½ inch and a 1/4 inch. You'll have to buy the other ones. Okay, so I would advise you to get them as quickly as possible, because the day you need it, you're not going to find them. So the minute I got that and I saw that it had the 2 sizes plus all the other parts, I thought, hang on a minute. So I ordered them directly from here, so I've got the whole range, okay. Because sometimes you get a kit, you want to use a kit for a particular thing, like, I'm just going to say, for example, like an inlay kit. And you get the bit and it's got an 8mm bit in it. And then you look at it and you say, okay, now seriously, where am I going to get? But now you've got the collet for it, so you can put it in, you can get going, you understand? So always read the box of the stuff that you're buying, even down to the dovetail jigs. They also catch you out in the dovetail checks. You, for example, will buy yourself this 1/4 inch. Okay, now you're all happy, you've got yourself a router, and you're excited, and you're just an excitable woodworker. And then suddenly you discover your favorite YouTuber. I'm not a YouTuber. No, you discover your favorite YouTuber by the name of Rob Cosman, okay? And Rob's busy making dovetails, and now you get all romantic over dovetails. You say, oh, I'm going to make dovetails. So you come here and you buy yourself a dovetail chick, and you go back home, and you're excited, and you take all of this out. And because I said to you, read the manual, this is what you're doing now, because you think this is a good way to do things. And as you read the manual, it says, the bits that are supplied with this are ½ inch bits. So therefore, make sure you've got a ½ inch router. 1/4 inch, ½ inch. That's not going to fit. And then you're all disappointed and you're frustrated because it's Saturday afternoon and you really wanted to do these dovetails to show your wife, that's to justify why you bought this machine. And now your plans are going asunder. And now you're starting to get a little bit angry and angry and more angry. Okay. So please read the box before you buy a router related kit. There's always a caveat. Again, it's only with hindsight that you realize you should have bought a ½ inch because it goes all the way down. You should have bought that. But the thing that scared you is this, because you thought that was cute. So you started with that. And then when you bought this, you said, whoa, I should have bought this first. This is so cool. And now you want to go and make dovetails, and now you're upset again. Then you buy the ½ inch. You say, whoa, I should have bought the ½ inch instead of this rubbish thing and instead of that thing. And then you can put these two under the table, and then there you go. Okay? I hope I'm making sense of something here for you. Because I know you've all done that. Who's made dovetails? Anybody? Dovetail jig? Lead jig? No? All right, you've been warned, eh? Buyer beware. Buyer beware. Hardware center, they are coming, but buyer would beware. And don't trust these guys to tell you. They're out there to make a sale, eh? Especially, what's that tall one there? No, don't say his name. It's going live. Don't want a defamation case. All right, so there's the little cute router, the laminate. Okay, you know what I'm talking about now. That's the one that you always want to go buy. I don't even know when last, I think it must be about 8 or 9 years ago that I took out my Makita laminate trimmer, the lunchbox one. I hope I still got it, unless somebody sold it off for other things. But no, that's what it's for. Can you see the laminate that's coming over the edge? Now you're looking at that and saying, oh, but I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. Okay, all right, for today, you're not going to do it. And then when you finally retire from your work, and then you get this job, and the guy says, oh, please, can you put this, I want a fluorescent green top. And you say, but how do I do that? Then you phone me and you say, Bunny, this guy wants a fluorescent green top. How do I do that? I said, no, you go to Nova Decor and you go buy the laminate from them. It's 1.4 meters wide by 3 meters long. You buy a sheet of that and you trim it and you put it on. Okay, cool. Then you get it. Then you say to me, oh, okay. So that's what you're going to use it for. Also, another thing is if you do edging, if you do your own edging on your boards and you make a little jig, you can put it sideways and you can trim your edging off. You don't have to sit there with a chisel or a special little edging tool that you must come and buy. That's what it's meant for, okay? You can then trim that off quickly. It'll be much quicker. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, next one. The anatomy of a router. Please have a look at that. So for the most part, most routers have the same design. So when you're looking at, so this would be towards you, and then that's the direction you'd be going. So in this case, this is an electric router, variable speed. Sometimes they're on the handle or they're sitting at the top. You have your motor. There's your two handles, nice to grab. Your trigger underneath the handle with a lock on the side. I never use the lock. I never use it that thing can work on its own. I just want to be under control. If something happens, I can just pull it off, let go of that switch, and it can sort itself out. Okay, it'll slow down, it'll stop. I don't want to lock it. Okay, so I don't do things like that. Some of the lock switches have changed on some of the machines. I think on the Bosch now, it's a safety feature, so you can't start it without pressing in the lock. Then you start it, then you can go, but it won't lock the actual button, so it won't lock it at all. It's only there to unlock the switch so you can depress it. Anything happens, you let go, everything's safe for you, pull it away, and off you go, okay? Some of them can lock and stay at that speed, so those are the ones I'd be very careful of, okay? Then there's your collet. There's your depth stop. I call it a turret. A depth stop will also be fine. There it is on the back, so there's the depth stop. They should all have them in some form or another. So Festral's got this very fancy one over here that you can raise and lower the depth stops by taking a little Allen key and putting it in and raising it and lowering it. The reason why this is an amazing machine. It's got 27 millimeters of depth stop on this thing. So you start off at 0 and you keep going down 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, up to a maximum of 27 millimeters on those depth stops. I mean, what more do you want? I mean, that's an inch's worth of depth that you're getting out of there. I mean, what are you doing that you want to go deeper than that? Then you should be using a drill. Okay, so absolutely amazing. I'll even tell you that on my machine, my big boys, why Bosch did it, I've got the same turret stop or depth stop, but they put a screw in the middle of one of them. And I, for the life of me, can't understand why would they do that when this one is the cheap and, well, it's the DIY range, and this thing's got everything and it works perfectly. I think it's a 1400, this one, yeah. This is the perfect machine to get. Or you can get the blue one, the Goth 130. It's a 1300, the blue one. They both the same family. They're amazing toys. I'm not trying to promote them or sell them, but they are seriously just the most amazing machines I've ever come across. Fine adjustment settings. Anyway, let's go. Okay, so that's the general design of a router. Okay, any questions on that? Anybody? Internet world, anybody got a question? Don't you want to ask us how the weather is in Joburg?
Thomas says no questions, you're doing.
No, man, Thomas, thanks, my mate. I appreciate it. All right, okay. Any other questions on there? No, that's it. All right, good. Okay, table routers. Okay, this is a different animal, even though it uses a router. It's a nice machine to have in the shop. I can assure you that. But it's something that needs to be treated with caution, okay, and be respected. That little machine can cause a little bit of chaos if it needs to, all right? For the most part, if you know how to work with the router table, things are a little bit different because you're working upside down with the router as opposed to from the top. So a little bit of brain thinking has to twist a bit to try and get things done. But normally for repetitive tasks and for smaller items, then that's the ideal toy to work with. Okay, so you either want to take your Colt that you're no longer using, stick that under a router table. They are easy enough to make, that you can clamp onto your desktop and you can hold it in front of you like this and move the parts through. Or you have a bigger one that you can work like that with a nice dust extraction system on it. That will work nicely for you. Now, some of you should be watching that picture, and there's something that I've spoken to you twice already about that's shown to you in that image. I spoke to you twice about it. You're not looking at the picture. There's the Triton router underneath the table, and there's that little handle that they give you with the Triton. So it's got the little lifter. So you put that little lifter in through the hole, hits the router, and you can turn it to raise and lower it. Okay, and that comes in part of the box. So you don't have to go and buy yourself a separate table. All your only investment you're going to make is the table with a router plate. That's your investment. Or you make yourself a table and get yourself a decent router plate. So get yourself a Craig or whatever they sell. Pick up one of those, okay? And then fit it, because they're mostly universal. Why are you late? Why are you late? Yeah, you smile at your dad, but you sit over there and you're late. Huh? Get up earlier in the morning. Nice to see you. Good. Alrighty. So, some router tips and tricks. Okay, so let's go and have a look and see what we can do. So I think what we're seeing there tells you some things already, okay, and what we're going to have a look at. So let's just start off with the basics, okay? Have a look at that. Does that make any sense to you? Any sense? No sense? Nonsense? Yeah, let's start off with the first thing. Who does not know what direction you should go around on a tabletop when you want to route it? Who does not know? Okay, thank you. Okay, okie dokie. Who does know which way we should go around the table? Okay, tell me. So you're going, which way you go? That way around or that way around? The last one. Okay. So don't get yourself all scientifically confused with all of this. It's actually quite easy. Take your right hand. Put your thumb out. Put your index finger out. And put that next to the board. And that's the direction of the router. So, now we want to do the inside of a hole on a table. Which way do we go around? So in the hole, do the same thing, put your thumb against the edge, and that's the direction you're going to travel. So which way will you go on the inside of the table? Yeah, you'll go clockwise on the inside of a table, and anti-clockwise on the outside. That's why I say don't overthink it, just use that. So you're on this table, you're going to go there. That's the direction. If you're on the inside of a table, you're going to put it there and you're going to go that way around. So it'll work out anti-clockwise, clockwise. But don't worry about it. Just make sure you set your... I sometimes have to stop and think. You know, you're working so much and doing so much stuff that I actually have to say, okay, which way? Then the first thing I do is just that. And then off I go. Okay. But it'll happen to you. So just use the right hand, not the left hand. Don't tell me, oh, but I'm left-handed. Okay. Got it. Does that help for the people that don't know? Will that help you? All right, cool. All right, so there's something else that they're showing you here that's quite interesting. They're talking about this climb cut northeast and south and west and whatever. Let's not get too complicated. Let's work quite simply. I have a table in front of me, okay? This tabletop, the grain's running this way, all right? So the end grain is there and the end grain is there. And the long grain is on that side and the long grain on this side. So those of you that have routed a tabletop or a square thingy-mabob or piece of wood and you've gone the right way, that way, and you've gone round the table, tell me what's happened when you've gone round. Tell me your story. Yeah, tear out where? Yeah, but on which edges? So there's the end grain, there's the long grain. Where did you have tear out? So as you were exiting there, you got tear out. And as you exited there, you got tear out. Is that correct? Anybody confused? All right. So what I've done is just zoomed into that little patch there. So there's end, this is the end grain, and that's the long grain. Direction of cut is going that way, okay? They've also got an arrow going back. Now, they're talking to you about a climb cut. So for those of you that got the direction of your router on the table wrong, if you went that way, it felt kind of weird. It felt like it was pushing away from the table. Is that right? As you went down, it kind of got a little bit awkward to work with, and you said, no, this is something's not right here. And then you tried maybe this way, because you want, like we do, we evolve. You tried it this way and you said, no, well, this works okay. And off you went. So you went around the table, and then when you exited that point, it created a splinter, it tore out a splinter on that end there. And then you looked at it and you said, okay, now what's going on now? So this is the classic tear out. It's going to happen with anything. If you have a miter saw and you put a piece of wood down on the miter saw and you exit on, so you're going to cut it across the grain, when you exit there, you're going to have tear out there on the miter saw. That's why you put a piece of sacrificial wood on that side, so when you cut through, it doesn't splinter, splinters on the other side. Is that right? Because that's one of the biggest problems we have when we're making cabinetry, is that we keep on going to our machines, and then the stuff splinters, and then we look at it, and then we try and sand it, and when you put it together, it's all lacquer until you see that one corner that's like that, and then you look, straight away we see, okay, all right, so you never prepared for tear out, and that's how we catch these guys in competitions. Because all you do is take your square up, put your square up it, and you'll see, oh, it's perfect, and then it ticks over like that. And you know what the guys do? They turn it around so it's on the inside of the leg. They think, I couldn't care what's going on the outside, so I'm going to look on the inside, and as I look, I see it's like that. And I think, oh gosh, so this guy didn't do anything to stop the tear out, to mitigate tear out, and he sanded it down to try and cover the tear out. So you pick it up straight away. And I mean, it's seriously, if you claim to be a woodworker and you're doing that, seriously, go back to grade 8 and learn woodworking there and improve your skills, because seriously, something's wrong. Okay, let's sort this out. The process is actually very easy. I'm going to demonstrate it by way of this. So normally what happens is when I do a tabletop, this is how I go about a tabletop. I normally start down at the bottom here. Makes sense, because I want to go up there. But there's a thing called a climb cut or a back cut. And for me, this is something that's quite interesting. The Americans will classify a climb cut or a back cut as extremely dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous things you can do in woodworking. So basically, it's taboo with them. Okay? That's why every single YouTube video that you watch, you'll always see the guy's got a piece of wood stuck extra on the end here when he's busy doing the end grain, and then he'll exit out of that, and then this piece of sacrificial wood, then he goes through that. You always see that in those YouTube videos when they, or for the most part, you never see them demonstrating when they go around the table. You never see it. And I'm being dead serious. The only guy who's just demonstrated it properly is Padula Studios, the guy who does that one, the Australian bloke. What is his name? I forget his name. He's the only guy who's demonstrated how to router a table properly. Okay, so start in this corner, and then what do? I normally start here, then I go up against, start the machine, come down, start, go in, and then I pull this back. Okay? When you pull it back, you're going to feel it jiggle a little bit on you, but you're holding it because you're white knuckle. You pull it back. And when you pull it back, you're going slowly now, okay? And this beads of sweat are cracking and your hands are going sweaty. You're doing okay. And as you pull it down, you rotate around that corner. You'll feel it. You go around the corner and you come down. And then when you finish, you pull it off and you have a look, and you'll see this corner that you've done it. But when you feel it, it's kind of like ribbed and a little bit rough. What's happened is that the router blade, as it's rotating, it's actually slamming into the wood. It's not cutting the wood. So it's basically shearing and compressing the wood. All that it takes is that you come back down there, round the corner. You can safely put it back there, go forward, and then creep around the corner and go forward again. You've got yourself a perfect corner, no tear out. Does that make sense? Now you can travel all the way down here, and then you can travel all the way down there. Read your grain on the end here. If the grain is running out like that towards the table, it may tear out on this side. It shouldn't, but it may because of the grain. So it might be a grand idea to do a back cut there and there. What's it going to cost you? Nothing. Just do it and then follow through. Now, don't exit here. I did it once. I was on the last step of my job. I built this, I'll never forget it, a 4-meter Kiot table by 1.5 meters wide, 50 mil top. I'm on my last. I've done the sanding. I've done absolutely everything. I'm finished this thing. I've even got it on its apron. And as I exit over here, I remember I should have done the back cut. And I can watch that splinter go. And the splinter, man, I watched this. How it happened, I don't know. But I watched the splinter land on my table saw. And I looked at this and I thought, okay, and I've got the router like this. I don't want to take my eyes, because the minute you take your eyes and you look again, it's gone. So I thought, no, hang on a minute. So I kept my eyes on that splinter, switched the machine off, picked the splinter up, and then a little bit of super glue, put it back on, and off I go. No, it's perfect. Please make sure you don't exit again, because I'll more than likely rip it out again. This time do the back cut. If I couldn't find that splinter, I would have to cut it, put a piece of wood on top of that, wait for it to dry, flush cut the whole thing all the way around, and then retrim it. Does that make sense to you? So generally speaking, now after that experience, that was about 3 or 4 years ago, I realized, hang on a minute, I've got to concentrate on this. So I don't always hit the corners first. I make sure that I'll start there, back cut on that one, or climb cut, then go forward, go there. But normally before I come off here, I'll quickly do that one, and then I'll move across. Okay, so I'm always conscious. So I have a pattern. Start there, climb cut, go this way around. I'll do a little climb cut here. And then before I do the full length, I go there. So generally on the end grain, because the end grain also has a tendency, especially when you're working with plywood, if you're busy running it on the end grain, it always shears no matter what you do. Okay, so in that case, because those pliers are thin, so then what I do is I just do a climb cut all the way down on the end grain side. So it doesn't stop, it doesn't cause any splintering. So just come back and then you can go forward to clean it up. Okay.
Why aren't you doing a climb cut on the corner close to you?
It's not because there's no tear out. I'm on long grain. But it can happen if the grain happens to flow out. Sometimes it can. I might have there might have been a branch here somewhere, and now the grain's flowing out this way. There could be tear out that happens there. So you want to mitigate that, okay? So what I would suggest is that you don't worry about mitigating. Maybe just do it as a precautionary, okay? And then do that corner as well. Normally that corner, I don't know, for some reason, always is the safest corner, but it's worth just paying attention to it. And I'm telling you now, plywood, I think you guys have worked with plywood, and you've tried to route it and just splinters and it shears and it creates those little long strips and whatever. Climb cut the thing. So when you do the climb cut, it stops all of that splintering and shearing and whatever the case may be, and then go forward, okay? And then set it up and do it. Don't drop it by a millimeter, because then you're going to catch everything again. Rather just come back, climb cut, and then go forward. Just hold your router nicely when you do the climb cut. You'll feel it behaving like a little bit of a hooligan, okay? Don't be American about it, all right? We don't worry about stealth bombers, man. We are the bomber, okay? All right. So please just manage the process. It's probably one of the best hints I can give to you, and you can take away with you, okay? This is going to happen to you over and over again. And until your head gets it right that it needs to do this properly, it'll be fine, okay? All right, good. So a little tip for you. Sand wood edges smooth before routing with edge trimming bits. Any flaws that the bearing encounters on the edges will be telegraphed onto the edge. So what I'm saying to you there is, make your cut and then sand it. Oh my goodness, guys, don't. A mate of mine gets hold of me, says to me, oh, my edges are all like this over the length. He's got a 3-meter table. I said, well, what's wrong? He said, no, I sanded it. He said, but this whole thing is like that. So I go and I have a look at it, and then I realize that he's sitting too long in this patch. So he's taking more off there, and then he comes out lightly here, and then he goes deeper there, and then light. So eventually it is like that over the time he spends on it. It doesn't matter what sander you use, even if you've got the fancy Festool, the one that's got the 90-degree adapter on it. I've got one. If you sit too long in one spot, all you're going to do is get a perfectly 90-degree edge, but the thing is still going to go like that. So once you've made your cut, get your sandpaper on, and then sand. You need to move at a steady speed and move all the way down, okay? Get it over and done with. Don't sit and hover. If there's still things that are causing a bit of a problem, take out a cabinet scraper and fix it up, okay? Don't always hit sandpaper. Sandpaper can be a disaster for you. And then when you make that route, because I know clients, one of the things that clients do is they spend this money, and then of course there's Alex the Pro. Oh, but why is it like that? No, that's the new design that we've got. It deals with expansion and contraction of wood. So like today, it's a bit of a wet day, so it's now pushed some part. You know the story, okay? So please, just manage it, all right? On the end grain, just a bit of a hint for you. When you're doing the end grain, you guys normally put your varnish on and realize the end grain has gone darker than the rest of the top. Is that correct? How do you sort that out? Anybody? Do you know what I'm talking about? So whenever you have a piece of wood, you can take a piece of scrap in the shop, paint the end grain, and then paint the long grain on the top, and then have a look at the two shades that you've got. The one on the end is darker than the one on the top. You've seen that. The way to prevent that from happening is before you leave today, get yourself a little bag of shellac, get some methylated spirits, mix it up. And the first thing you do before you start your varnishing is put shellac on the end grain. Seals the end grain off so it doesn't soak the varnish in. Now when you put the varnish on, it will be the same color on the end grain as it is on the top. Okay? All right, something you can take back with you. All right, you understand what to do here? If you don't get it right, you're going to have to recut the top again to straighten it and then have a second attempt on it. I hope you've got a bit of space left. Yes? Sanding sealer? To a certain degree, yes, it could. Test it though, hey? I'm a shellac guy. I've got sanding sealer. I don't know when last I've used this stuff because nobody wants to close pores anymore. They all want this grain effect on everything now. On end grain, no. I've always been my go-to is hitting shellac, even with red oak, which is highly absorbent. You know, you put it on the end. You've got to probably put about 2 or 3 coats on the end of red oak to seal it off, but that'll stay the same color. Okay. But test these things, eh? Give it a test.
I didn't quite get the question. The question I was going to ask, when you're talking about shellac, I would assume, especially for outdoor use, instead of sanding sealer, you could use shellac.
All right, the question is, I'll ignore the first part because the guy was nodding off. It was a tip that I gave with regards to shellac. Okay. But the question is, can we use it instead of sanding sealer on outdoor? No. So the reason why is that shellac is brittle. So if you think, I'm trying to think of an example. So think of a piano finish. Piano finish is shellac, button polish. You know, if you drop something on it, it shatters like glass. So it'll show you that it cracks. So the shellac is exactly that. It cracks like a film. So once the carrier, which is the methylated spirits, flashes off, then the shellac binds and bonds back together again, creating like a, so it's like nail polish. Think of nail polish, because that was shellac that they always used to put in there. So no, it wouldn't be advisable to put it on outdoor furniture, not in any circumstances. So don't say you're going to put it as an undercoat and then overcoat it. No, don't do that at all. So it's not ideal for outside at all. Keep it strictly on the internals, okay? It's nice to work with. Yeah, I mean, you can use it as a sanding sealer as well if you wanted to. I do that as well if I'm going to stain. Don't put stain down and then shellac, because the stains that we got, like the Nova products, Nova, I'm giving you a punt. So the Nova products are spirit stains. So the minute you put shellac over the top of that, it just blotches. Goes like cloudy, milky blotches. So because of the spirits in your shellac, now I'm messing with the spirits in the dye. So that creates confusion. So, but if you put a water base, you'll be safe. So there's a couple of things you've got to play around with to try and work out what you're going to do and how you're going to do. Okay. But normally for outside furniture, give it a good sand, take it up to 180, put on any of the good products, wood oak or Rice-Tex, whoever you've got as your favorite product. I like the, I like the Rice-Tex armor decking or armor floor or whatever. That stuff is like bulletproof because it's got UV inhibitors in it. And that's really, really good stuff. You'll see on the groups I'm always pushing the product because it is really that good. The wood oak is good as well, but it's the price tag that comes with it. The wood oak 50. I mean, that's good, but it's the price tag, okay? But you make your choices, okay? I'll tell you something though, the wood oak has never failed me. That stuff just lasts for, geez, like 10, 15 years. Rice-Tex is pretty good. I can't give you longevity because I've used it and I haven't seen anything deteriorate at this point. In terms of time, probably about 8 or 9 years. Okay, so far so good. All right. Does it answer the question?
Yeah.
In detail?
Yeah.
Very much so. Thank you. Don't ask questions because you get a detailed answer. By the way, it was that tip. It wasn't, nobody asked a question. I was just saying how to block off the end grain. Okay, something worth thinking about, eh? All right, good. Where are we off to? Edge routing, narrow stock. All right, so this is going to happen with you. You need to do edge routing on a narrow stock because why? You don't have a router table. That's why you're doing that. What we're showing you is you have a support board where you've pinned that down onto your tabletop. Remember, these tabletops are designed for you to screw things down onto. They're not there to look pretty. Go and have a look at some of these tables. They're pretty knackered. Yeah, like this one. Somebody's put a table saw through it already. So they're supposed to be used. The tops are quite good. When you unscrew it, you flip it over, you can use the other side. And then when it gets messed again, you get a new one. Okay? Your table stays, but the top gets changed. Okay? All right, there's your narrow piece. So what you do is you then put a narrow piece in there. There's your support board. You might want to put a board stop on this end. and then you can put your little narrow piece in there, and then you can route it and put your round over or whatever you want to do on top of that, okay? That happens, but it's complicated. It's a routed table scenario that you're looking at there as a proper solution. Yes, Herman?
How do you secure that to the actual board?
Which one? Oh, this one, yeah. So that's your support board. So you screw that down onto your worktop. And then this one, there's a stop board here, so you basically just fit it in, and then you can route it down there. It's sufficient for you to work like that, okay? So no need to go and get double stick tape or use the YouTube super glue blue tape method. Where did they come up with that stuff? It's cheaper to use double stick tape. I've got a roll of double stick tape I bought about 10 years ago, and I think I've maybe used 3 meters of it. So yeah, think about it. Okay, does that work for you? Is it an idea? But it's a router table solution that. Does that make sense? Because you would take that piece and turn it around and put it up on the router table fence and then push it down. So that justifies putting a table in. All right, cut dados using a jig. Look, this is not something I'm saying that you have to do. What I'm trying to show you here, or illustrate to you, is that you set up a jig to help you to get the job done. That's really what it boils down to, okay? So if you have a look at what's going on this particular slide, hey, do you know what a dado is? All right. Have a look at the bookshelf behind you. All right, have a look at the shelf and how it connects to the sides of the bookshelf. In that scenario, there's one or two things going on. Either the sides are directly connected to the shelf is connected to the sides, or they're on shelf pins, correct? Because that's how we do it in modern times. This is how we do it. We use melamine, we cut the boards, we put pin holes in, we then put it to wherever we want, and that's how the thing stands. The shelves are loose, we can move them around. If you're a proper cabinet maker, then you do things like this, where the shelves are fixed. I mean, I had to do something for a client in January, and they've got a fairly extensive library. But their library is established, so it was a case of taking pictures and then measuring the heights of whatever they've got and where. And that's the heights that we set for the shelves, and the shelves were fixed into dados. So a dado is a groove that goes across the board. That's called a dado. And then you put the board into that dado. So let me illustrate. I'm going to use South Africa measurements. You've got 16 millimeter thick board, and you want to create a dado. You get yourself a 16 millimeter router bit. You router the dado 1/3 in to the thickness of the wall of the board, which means in 16 that'll be 5 millimeters in, and then you put your shelf into the dado. You glue it into the dado. You can also put screws or dowels or whatever you want on the sides, or biscuits if you can manage them, to then hook it in so it stays. But normally the glue and the shelf and the dado are strong enough to hold this thing together. What's your width? There's a website called Sagulator that'll tell you what weight you can put on what material and what's the maximum length you can of that, or width of the shelf you can go. Okay, Sagulator.com. Please go and use it. The guy put it up there for a reason. It's to help you out and me. Okay. All right, on any material. All right, I'm serious, any material. Okay, so if you wanted to make dados in a cupboard, okay, because you're going to show off your skills, not difficult, this is what you do. But you make a jig. So this jig is like a T-square. So it's a piece of wood like this that goes flush with the tabletop. And then on top of it, you put another piece of wood. So it's like a T-square, okay? Now you can see they've screwed it to that top part of the T, and there's the long part of the T, okay? What you now do is clamp it, and then you take your router and a piece of scrap. First, that's what you do. And then with your router, with the bit that you're going to work with, the 16 millimeter bit, you route a groove through that piece of the T, okay? Because that shows you where exactly the cut will always take place. Do you understand? Because now this top part acts as a fence for your router. Now, when you want to make your dados in the board, you mark where you want your dados, then you take the bottom of the groove in the T and line it up, clamp it down, and then when you take your router and push it through, you get the dado in the exact spot that you wanted it. Just remember, when you do this, make it like a leaf. So that's the one board, and the opposite board is up here. Make it like a leaf so the two are together, and make one mark there that corresponds with the mark here. And then when you take them apart and you make the dados, they line up. Does that make sense? All right. Then you make your dados. You then take your boards and put your boards in between with glue, clamp them up. Remember to keep them square, okay? If anything, they must be square, otherwise you'll have a headache. That's a topic for another day. But that's the idea of setting up a jig for your router, okay? And using that. Now, some guys are quite clever. They use the square not just for that. Because, I mean, this is fairly wide. You can make it about half that width. And then you can use it as a normal square when you're busy trying to cut a bigger piece of material, a bigger sheet of material, to use it as a square for that scenario. Set it up properly. It's got multi-use out of it, okay? So there's an example of how you could set up a jig to do dados, for example. And that's the proper way to do a cabinet, okay? All right. On the next one. All right, so there we go. There's the dados. So now you can see there, you can just make out the pencil mark with the existing groove. They've lined it up, and now you can see them pushing the router through. Now you can see here's a use case for the fixed base router. Because now the depth is set properly, all you're going to do is start at the back end and just push it all the way through. Does that make sense to you? Okay. All right, there we go. There's your fence, and you keep it up against the fence. That's why these toys have got a round base. Because no matter where you put it on the fence, it keeps the same distance off from the fence for the center. Put that side on the fence. If you wobble slightly, you're going to have a wobble in your dado, okay? So that will make sure the dado stays 100%. You've got basically that much of steering versus that little bit there. This is not for the edge at all. This is designed so the thing doesn't fall to the table. Except now this extraction is here, so you're going to still put it like that, and let's see what happens. All right. Does that make sense to you? Okay. All right, good. Right, another tip. Use a straight bit with a diameter the same as the board thickness to receive the dado. Like I said earlier on, with a 16 millimeter or thick board and a 16 millimeter straight cutter. Okay. When I say talk about a straight cutter, I'm talking about something like that. Okay. Don't need a bearing on it. You just need a straight cutter to do that job. All right. This will make sure that you have a nice, tight, snug fitting shelf. Okay. Now let's take it back a little bit. Some more gobbledygook from me, so you can become a very keen woodworker. In the early years, when they used to make the bookshelves the proper way with a dado, okay, there were two. We've got it very different today. Today we've got machines that you can become a one-stop shop as a woodworker or a cabinet maker. So in other words, you will be thicknessing your boards. You'll take it down to the thickness you want. So let's say 16 millimeter thick. You will then make the side panel 16 millimeter thick. You'll then go and route it 16 millimeters thick. Let's just rewind. Let's go back to somewhere around about the 1950s. In the 1950s, there was one guy, or two or three guys in a workshop that would flatten a 16 millimeter board for you. Okay? And you may be the cabinet maker who makes the dado with a plow plane. Okay? So you plow that dado out on the piece of wood with a handheld plow plane, if you understand what I'm talking about. Neil, do we have a plow plane that I can show the guys? Handheld. Or router plane. Plow plane, router plane, sorry. I'll show you what it is. You would do that on the boards. You would get the 16 mil boards and you would do that. But then what would happen is when the guys delivered the boards to you, because in those days things were a little bit different. Measuring was pretty much a hit and miss scenario. So now you wanted to try and fit the boards into these dados that you created. And you suddenly found out that some of the boards were just a fraction too thick to fit in there. Now remember, you've got a hand plane. You're the cabinet maker and you may know how to work with a hand plane, but your expertise may not be flattening boards. So you don't start attempting to flatten a board because they've given it to you and it looks perfect. You don't start fiddling with that at all. So what are you left with? You've got to widen that groove. So what happened was Stanley invented a little router or a little hand plane. It's got a blade on the side that you can use to then cut off a millimeter or a fraction of a millimeter off the side of your dado that actually fits into that dado, and then you run it along and then slice that little bit off so that your board will fit into that hole. I just want to show you what it would resort to if you had to And I mean, if routers weren't available, this is how the guys would work. So it was a different world that you lived in, okay, to do things the proper way. Now today, we've got machines that do everything for us and help us, so we can come a one-stop shop and do all the work. I mean, you can flatten sand and everything with machinery. It's taken the fun out of making things, I think, to a certain degree. Now it's just a quick, get it done, thanks to IKEA. You can always thank them, and the Second World War, as a matter of interest. Yeah, because after the Second World War, everything went square. No, it did. Everything went square. All the rounded stuff and the fancy stuff disappeared. Everything was square. I need a cupboard. For what? To put my books in. All right, I'll make you a square box and then with 2 shelves, and that's your cupboard. Not a fancy thing like I posted on the groups last night. That was something else. It's still square, but a lot of fancy things on it. So this is what you would have landed with. Thanks, Neil. So that's it. That's what you would have used instead of this. So that's your router plane, okay? All right. So there's your little Omar Satant. You may have heard that terminology, Omar Satant, where your grandmother had just one tooth left. So that little cutter looks like Omar Satant. If anybody's heard that expression, there you are. You're looking at it now. There's Omar Satant. So you would lower that, and then you router that data out. So obviously you put a fence up, and then you router it, and then you make that data with this. And once you've made it, there's nothing to cut the side. So they've made a specific cutter. Just hold both handles when you move it around, please. When you move it around, the next guy take the handle, and then the next guy, and then let go. Please don't drop it, okay?
How would you set it on the fence?
Okay, there's 2 things. No, you can. Put it on the, you put a block of wood up on it and travel. Yeah, sorry. Either there, or you can use this bottom part. You can put a square block of wood underneath there. Or you can attach a block for a fence, okay? So a number of ways of managing that one. Okay, so there you go. That's an interesting little thing. And then there was a solution for the groove. If the groove was too tight, there was a tool to cut the groove. And they had, I mean, that's why when you go and look at these hand tools, there's millions of them. And you probably all stand and say, but why? Now you know, but why? Okay, there was a reason for all of that. Now, the interesting thing is that as you embark on your woodworking journey, I don't know how some of you have evolved, but as you get to a certain point, hand tools start becoming an attraction. Why? Because they introduce accuracy and clean cuts. That's what they start doing. So like myself, your miter saw becomes just a point of cutting it up within 0.5 millimeter of the line. And then you take it off to your shooting board, and then you shoot the rest of it off on your shooting board to bring it into the exact measurement. And then there's no tear out, there's no damage to the wood, and it fits perfectly. And it's got a perfectly cleaned end or edge. Does that make sense to you? That's the reason for hand tools. So if you are the person that's thinking, you know what, I like hand tools, I'm interested and keen in it, I would say to you, go read up a little bit about hand tools, or maybe just ask your favorite AI, Grok, and then say, dear Grok, I'm a woodworker, and it will come up laughing, and then you'll say, no, serious, I'm a woodworker, can you guide me, what are the best hand planes I could use for a starter? And it'll tell you things like, go get yourself a number 8, and then you'll say, cool, and you go get a number 8, and this thing's like 600 millimeters long, and you think, well, what am I going to do with that? And you go back to Grok and say, but I told you I wanted a hand plane. It says, no, but you didn't tell me what for. So be specific, and it'll give you a nice little list of what some of the basic tools are. Then start looking for them, so that you'll get to that day when you want to start working with hand tools, then you can start putting it together. It'll be a pleasure to play with, okay? I absolutely love my hand tools. My hand tools collection is getting bigger and bigger and bigger now by the day. And they're the best thing ever. That little cabinet that I put up last night, there was a part that was a bit difficult to work with. The only way I could have fixed that part is if I had the right tool, and it was a hand plane that could butt straight up into the edge and clean it up. Okay, that was a chisel plane, and it worked perfectly for the job. So the previous guy didn't have a chisel plane. He tried to use a chisel to clean it out. And he did a good job with it, but you could still feel the bump in it. And the chisel plane, because it picked up the flatness of the back of the board, I could keep it flat and keep on going in until I got the whole thing flat to the back. So it was perfect. Anyway, I digress. But I hope that makes sense to you, okay? All right. Did I jump a slide there? Let's just check. All right, cool. So, rebate. The English-speaking people from England, we say rebate. The Americans say that word. Okay. All right. This is a guide I want to give you. Not just for rebate cutting, for anything. Try and see if you can get yourself a set of bearings for your cutter. Okay? Because the set of bearings will give you the distance from wherever you need to work, whether it be 3 millimeter, 4 millimeter, 5 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 8 millimeter, the common ones, 10, 12. You'll get the bearing diameter that will allow you to keep that distance away to do the particular cut that you want to take, okay? So what is a rebate? Nobody asked me what this rebate was, or a rabbit. What is a rebate? Okay, we had a dado, okay? That was the groove across the grain. So a rebate is, again, turn around and look at that bookshelf. Okay, internet world, I'm showing them just a regular sized bookshelf made out of melamine, and it has a backing board. In fact, okay, so my lovely assistant, forgot to put his lipstick on, is now telling me this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a backing board. It's this back part here. So the modern day, the backing board, how would we attach that backing board in the modern day? Gosh, if we could get glue, we'd do that. But yeah, a nail gun with staples. Or no, not staples. Yeah, staples. We get a nail gun with a staple, and we staple them in on the back of the thing. So what happens is it's in your kitchen, and you happen to bang your plates, and the plates bang the board loose, and now how do you tighten that thing up to fit it back properly again? Now, forever you've got that little gap in the back of the cupboard. Some of you have got that at home. And that's exactly what happens. So that's how we do it in the modern age. But in those days, if you've ever taken the interest to go and have a look at how furniture is made, on the back of a cupboard with dados in it, you would find that there's a little groove all the way around the edges where the board fits into, snugly fits into that. That little recess that you get is called a rebate. Now it makes sense to you. So what you would do is and that normally works for one of the few occasions, doesn't work on thirds, it works on 50 or half. So if it's 16 millimeters, you would make a rebate that's 8 millimeters into the edge of the uprights. So you would take the uprights, cut an 8 millimeter groove all the way around, or rebate, and then your board would fit flush into that. So the depth of it is, because we use, I think, a 3 millimeter board or 3.2 millimeter thick board, you would make it 3 millimeter, you could make it 4 millimeter deep, and then you would put your board in, and then you would toe it in with the nails. When we say toe in, it means it goes in at an angle, okay? It doesn't go out that way, otherwise you're going to blow out on the sides, all right? So you toe it in, okay? Strange name, because your toes go like that, okay? Alrighty, so that's what we would do. So that would be a rebate. Now you're looking at it and saying, but we don't do that kind of stuff. I know we don't, but you may want to one day. And what I've told you now is now making sense for you. That day you wake up and you want to do it. So that could be in 2 or 3 years' time. You can stand and say, oh, gosh, I remember Bunny, and you'll remember me. Thank you in advance. Right, so there you go, rebate cutting. So there's our dado, across the grain. And then, of course, we're going that way. The guy standing there for the image, he's pulling the router towards him, okay? He's not pushing it towards us. So he's going in the right direction. Let's just clear that up. But he has a rebate cutter on there, and there you can see the groove in the back for the plywood. So the plywood cover would come up like that. Does that make sense to you? And it will recess into that and lay in there. All right, try and get that on as quickly as possible once you've glued everything, because that will help you to square things up. Okay, make sure you cut that back panel square, okay? Otherwise, that's not going to help you much either. All right, does that make sense to you guys? Okay. All right, router bit savvy. Okay, I think at this point, folks, let's grab a quick 15-minute break, and then we come back and I'm going to hit it again. Okay, internet world, go get yourself a coffee, 15 minutes, put the kettle on, answer your WhatsApps, and then we'll come back. So we'll be back 11:05. Thank you. Is Neil on there? Well, otherwise, eh?
Yeah, no, that's right. Keeping busy.
We actually in the same chair.
That's what I said. Alrighty, are we all in the house? Okay, good. Right, and action. All right, guys, let's go and have a look at the next one. That's Internet World. I hope you've enjoyed your coffee. Neil, please ask a question or two. I appreciate it. It's no good you just staring at the screen. Tell Ali I say hi. Right, roundabit savvy. So roundabits come in two types, folks. Okay, you have carbide tipped and then high-speed steel. All right, I got straight to the point. I don't want to dilly-daddle about this one. Don't waste your money on high-speed steel bits, okay? Cheap, nasty, won't hold edge for long, and they don't have a pilot bearing, so you're more likely to burn and tear the wood. Some of them do come with a pilot bearing, and I'll show you. I've got one right here. And these are carbide. Are high-speed steel. Carbide bits will cost you a little bit more. This is a carbide bit here. These yellow ones. They'll cost you a little bit more. They'll last a lot longer. And you know what, you can clean them up and you can give them a little bit of a sharpen if you need to, okay? So those are carbide and these are high-speed steel. So basically the cutters are sintered onto that material, and these ones, they try and make it form part of the bit, okay? That's why they're a bit more expensive. All right, but you can hand them around and have a look at that, okay? All right, so yeah, best investment, buy good. It'll last you much longer, okay? I mean, I've had occasion, a mate of mine, he owns Main Hardware in Joburg, Southside Joburg. Jeff Sadisky. And one day he phones me, says to me, come and have a look at I've got a whole bunch of router bits, come and have a look. So I said, okay, all right, come and have a look. He said so I said to him, how much? He said, 10 Rand a bit. I said, 10 Rand a bit, oh gosh, there's something dodgy with this, okay? And he's a proper salesman, so I'm thinking, okay, all right. So I go and have a look at the boxes and stuff like that. And I said to him, okay, but why are they so cheap? So what had happened is they came in a little box. In fact, Marius bought some of them. I don't see the boxes anymore. Here we go. They came in a box similar to this, okay? But what had happened is they were all in the container, and when they were shipped, the moisture probably got in, and there was cheap Chinese glue for the label. So all the labels fell off. So now you had to try and work out what you were buying in terms of a size. So for him to try and get somebody to open each box up, check the size, and then relabel it would work out more expensive. It was cheaper for him just to say, if you know more or less what you want, grab it and give me 10 bucks and go. So I bought about 1,000 rands worth of these things, thinking it was a good score. Get back to the shop. I tell Marius, I tell all the other guys that I know. Everybody goes crazy, we buy this stuff. I get back to the shop and I'm thinking, well, you know what? You try them. So I try them out. But geez, these things go blunt. As you're busy cutting, it's going blunt. But okay, for 10 bucks, you know what? Let it do the job and throw the thing away afterwards. So it was one of those bearings that came off while I was busy on a tabletop refurb that a client had given to me. I was busy putting a quarter round on it, and I'm on the last side. It's always on the last side, not there, this side. And I'm busy going along, and the next minute, I'm thinking, it feels like the route is actually going into the wood. So I thought, no, hold on, stop. And I pulled it back. Seriously enough, it dug in. The bearing had come off. So the bearing had basically just disintegrated. I never even saw it, didn't feel nothing. So look, the story about when things go wrong, it's going to shoot out like a bullet and kill you. None of that happens, man. Gravity takes care of 90% of all these things, and it's just plonk gone. But it now cut proper into the side, and I looked at it and I thought, you're kidding me. And I looked at the bit, so luckily the little pin that was sticking out where the bearing goes onto, that stopped on the side, so it wouldn't have gone any further, but it had done the damage. So I had to reconstruct it. So, all right, I hate to tell this, and it's on a recording, so you know the wooden glue solution? I believe it or not. I was so miffed. I grabbed some glue and some of the sawdust that was on the floor, munched it up and slapped it on this thing, went around, did the rest of the job, and then I made a cut. And when I looked at it, I thought, it doesn't look too bad. It looks like a knot. Yeah. But I mean, who has a knot on the edge of a table? You don't do that. As a cabinet maker or carpenter, you just don't do things like that, because that's one of the things that will come out. But anyway, so this little part is there. I've got a picture of it. I'll post it up on the groups, and then you guys can have a chuckle. But yeah, so those type of things do happen, okay? All right, now, the depth of cut. This was discussed a little bit earlier, all right? If you have a look at this particular image, a deep pass, in other words, if you take a deep cut, okay, it will remove a lot of material, but it's going to end up burning the wood. Now, all right, not always. It depends on the wood species. It depends on the speed of the router bit. It depends on the bit that you're using. And it depends on your speed busy moving through the wood, okay? So it's a couple of variables there that you need to consider. It's primarily three, but the fourth one would be the wood itself. So that's going to end up burning the wood. So here you can see a shallow final pass will give you a deep, clean result. So what we're saying is, if you need to make a cut, make the cut within 1 millimeter of your final cut. And then for your final cut, drop it by the millimeter, and then go and make your final cut. Because now you're a little bit more confident. Things aren't going to be heavy to push through. You can make one good, nice, smooth cut, clean everything up, and there's no burnout. Again, you may have a little bit of burnout because you slow down towards the end and slow down as you went around the corner. So there might be a little bit of burning. It's going to happen. But that will be easy enough for you to just sand that out, okay? All right. Don't try and go deeper again, okay? Because then you're going to start compounding problems that you've got. All righty, so that's how you manage it. So from a visual perspective, this is what you would be doing, okay? So those would be the stops that you have on your router. So the first stop would be 3 millimeter, the second one would be 6 millimeter, and the third one would be 9 millimeter deep. Do you understand? So set your stops accordingly. So you would plunge to the first stop, set it up, so 0 it, then 3, 6, and 9, okay? And just change your turret and keep your little column in place and just rotate so you can plunge 3 millimeters deeper each time round, okay? All right, so that's how you would manage that one. Normally, again, if you want to try and do that 1 millimeter, take a 1 millimeter router bit on the last one, and then put a 1 millimeter router bit in, lock it, then take the cut, and when you finish with it, then push it all the way down to the last stop, and then cut through. Okay. All right, you got any questions? Please fire away. All right, biscuit joinery without a biscuit jointer. Okay, just some things that you can do with a router. Like I said to you, routers are extremely versatile tools. Okay. So in this case, we're showing you that you can put a biscuit cutter on it, and then you can then route a groove all the way down the board and then just put your biscuits in there. Look, what's the benefits of doing something like that? Now you don't have to mark out exactly where you want the biscuits and then put your biscuit joint up against it and then make the marks on both faces. Now what you do is you just make one long groove all the way down and then just plant the biscuits in wherever you want and glue them up, and the opposite face matches. There's nothing you need to worry about. So the reason, why would you do something like that? Why would you want to use biscuit joinery between the boards for laminations? Why would you do that? Which way? Yeah. So you want to make sure if they cupped or bowed that you kind of flattening them out and then put them together. Okay. Normally you don't have to. If your boards are correct and they're flat, you don't need to do any of this nonsense. You just basically put the glue on the two faces and laminate. Job done. Okay. It's strong enough for them to hold. The biscuits are only there to line it if you've got cups and bows in it to straighten them out for you over the length. You wouldn't do this in something like 1 meter or 1.5 meters. It wouldn't be necessary. You would do that on long lengths, 3 meters, 4 meters. That's where it starts becoming a bit of an issue. Okay. And you put the biscuits in. All right. So that's one of the ideas. Hello. Okay, so let me tell you what happens in the real world. So I will start there and I'll exit on the other side and then realize what I've done. And then I'll have to come and exit this side and then just put 2 little splines in there, short little pieces, and then they become a feature at no charge. Okay. But yes, you can put a spline down there. Too much effort. Who's going to look inside there anyway? Yeah. Yeah, no, it's too much effort. Because if you don't get, so you make the spline the same thickness as the biscuit, which is just under 4 millimeters, and then you put the glue on, then the water gets into the spline, and then it starts expanding. Now you're trying to fit the spline in, and now the parts won't match or marry properly, and it becomes you know the drama that comes with that. So yeah, I would just put them on the ends where they're visible. Okay. Does that make sense? Don't put a long one in. No. The splines are ideal for short distances, okay, because they're manageable. So I did that, and by the time I was putting the spline in over the length, it started swelling up, and I just couldn't fit the stuff in on the opposite side or far side. And then try and push those two together. Because it's thin, it started crumbling, so then it made a gap in the join. So it was a disaster from start, and I just cut the 2 parts off and then laminated properly again, okay? All right, so please watch out for that, okay? Okay, there we go. So biscuit joinery, so there are 2 situations where you wouldn't, where a router can't substitute for a biscuit. In the first instance, a router can cut slots only along the edges, not across its face. So your biscuit jointer can, okay? It can only cut along square edges, not beveled ones. Your biscuit jointer can, okay? So very limited, but you know what? It works in a case where you need it. You know, if you've got a 3 meter long table and you're making a decision you're going to put a biscuit in, you need to mark them accurately, because if you don't mark the opposite side accurately, they're not going to fit properly. Then it's just better to throw a groove down, okay? That'll manage it. Then what it also means is you can read your board and mark exactly where you need to put biscuits in, because maybe there's one patch where it's bowed quite a bit. Then you can put more biscuits in there to try and level it out, as opposed to all the way down. I never put, if I'm trying to straighten a board out, I don't put them equally apart. I move them around so I can make sure that they properly level out with each other. Okay, so there might be more in one area than another area. Okay. All right. Most slot cutters cut slots about 12 millimeter deep, which is good enough for a number 20 biscuit. That's your biggest biscuit. But if you want to use the 0 and the number 10, remember we spoke about the bearings on the rebate. If you get a bearing kit, you can use the same bearing kit on your slot cutter. Okay. So you'll save out on the bearings, and then you can then set the distance for your 0 and number 10, okay? I think for most of us, we're always hitting the number 20s. Don't be scared. The number 10 and the 0 is there for a reason. In fact, there's more numbers. There's a D, F, and a G. They're also different sizes, okay? So You know, if you've got them, make use of them. There's appropriate times to work with these things, okay? All right, so there we go. All right, so biscuit joinery, there we go. So that's what I was talking about. There's your slot, okay? So you then put your biscuits in. And like I say, so what we do is we call it buttering up a biscuit. So you take a little container, pour your glue into that container, and then you butter up your biscuits. And all you do is you then, as you butter them up, you push them in, okay? And then that's the job done. Now you marry the two parts together. Please don't forget to glue the faces. So you glue the faces first, butter them up, put them in, so you don't have a specific spot. Now you can beat the clock for the glue to dry up, okay? Or an open time. Beat the clock, put the two parts together, and then off you go, okay? All right.
I did it yonks ago where I took the biscuits, they swell before.
Yeah, I shouldn't swell that quickly, eh?
So long ago, I didn't remember the details.
Yeah, look, maybe glue technology or whatever, but you're pretty much okay. Within about 5 to 8 minutes, you should be able to get them in properly without a headache. Okay. It's good to have you watch with a time on it, eh? So you get everything ready and you say, go, and you start buttering and you move. Some of the glues, especially out here on the Highveld, you know, we have days that the humidity is low, so we've got dry and high heat. Then it messes your whole strategy up, so you've got to be careful of how you work, eh? Then it might be more prudent to rather go with a specific slot marked on either face, so you can then butter it up on the inside and then pop your biscuits in and then close. That's the last step you need to do. So there's another way around that, okay? So it's up to you. But yeah, watch what you're doing. Normally if you're in a little shop, that's self-contained environment, you should be okay, right? All right. Just don't exit like me. I'll start there and then always exit on that side. I keep on doing it and I look at it and I say, oh, come on. And then the worst thing is now you've got to go make a little spline for that end, okay? I keep on doing it, but anyway, one day when I'm big, I'll get over it. Or maybe there's some tool that someone can make that will say, you're getting to the end of the board, stop. Okay. All right, cut slots for biscuits with a slot cutter mounted on an arbor that's equipped with a pilot bearing. Cut a continuous slot on boards thicker than 16 mil. Look, you can go down to 12. It's not a headache, okay? And remember, it's in thirds. If the cutter's 4 millimeter, you've got 4 and 4 on either side, so you're still okay, all right? Just don't get crazy about the whole thing. But you remember, you're leveling and flattening boards out. Now, look, when I say to you short distances, you wouldn't need to do it. I mean, I've made trays for people where I've cut the board 12 millimeter thick and then had to sand it down on the drum sander to 10 mil. And I've laminated those boards, okay, without using biscuits or anything. But then the tray's only 400 millimeters long. You know, and the width is not an issue here. But you know, you just laminate them, just rub them and then put them together, put a clamp lightly, and then they dry, clamp up, put them through the drum sander and everything's done. So don't always have to use tools to help you. The biscuits also another thing. Biscuits, dominoes, dowels do not help strengthen anything up. There's nothing, it's not strengthening the joint. It's good enough to have two flat faces that you put together. You don't have to do anything else over and above that, okay? Also, one of the other things that, I don't know if I'm going to mention it later, I'm trying to remember, but okay, so I'll leave it. I think I'm going to mention it a bit later. Well, here we go, talking about it now. Playing a straight edge. If you don't have a machine that you can get a straight edge on, okay, so in other words, typically what you would do is you would mill your piece of wood, so you put it through a thicknesser, then you would joint it, okay, or plane it, put it on a planer, and then you would put it up on a table saw to get the other side done because you want the board parallel, correct? So you would need 3 machines to do that job. So effectively you could use the router to do 2 of those machines' jobs, okay? So you need a thicknesser to thickness your board so it's parallel in thickness. And then what you would do is you would use your router to then cut the edge, put it up against the fence and do one edge and then do the other edge. If you're out by 5 or 6 millimeters from that end to this end on width, who the heck's measuring this? I mean, I've been up to 20 millimeters out of width. So say for example, 150 on the bottom and then I'm 170 up on this end. And I've laminated it together. Nobody's come to me and said, oh, hang on a minute, that's a bit wider than the bottom. I mean, if you look down, it looks like that anyway. Then you look from the other side, it still looks like that. How are you going to tell the difference? But you can laminate those boards. Are you with me? Who wrote the book that said they had to be parallel? Nobody. Yes, does it make sense? Yeah, so you just cut them the way you want. Save the material. Put them in play. Okay, don't make it 50 millimeters because you're going to probably pick that up, but 20 will be fine. Okay, so when you're cutting a board with a crooked edge, the best tool for creating a straight, smooth edge is a planer. So when you have to shave down a door or whatever, they more than what a sander can handle, but not enough for a saw, a Handheld power planer would be best. But you could also resort to using a router. Because remember now, a router is the best tool that has a perpendicular to the face that you're working with, okay? So it's 90 degrees. This is 90 degrees with the router bit to the face of what's underneath it. So when you put that down, it's perfectly, that angle that it makes is perfect. So now you don't have to sit and go and have a table saw, which is one piece of equipment, with a bevel gauge that you're going to hook to the blade to make sure it's exactly 0 to then cut that thing down. And you don't have to flip boards to make sure if they are cut at a slight angle that they marry. I'm exaggerating. But you need to make sure that they match and marry properly. Otherwise, you're going to have a gap either top or bottom. A router will cut it 100% perpendicular so to the face. So a router is the best option in this particular scenario. Okay. So run a pattern bit along a guide. Okay, how does this happen? All right, there we go. Run a pattern bit along a guide to cut a straight edge for thick boards. Remove the guide after the first part. All right, so what I'm showing you is, have a look at this. So there's a pattern bit. So here's the guide. So the bearing runs on the top part and then cuts this piece underneath it. Now you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, I've reached maximum depth plunge. How do I get to do the bottom part? The bottom part's actually quite easy. Because you've already cut a straight part, your bearing can catch the top part that you've cut and then it'll cut the bottom part for you. And when you look at it, you won't even see where the two cutting lines are. It'll be perfectly flush, okay? So there's an idea of how you can get that. So normally on the thicker boards and the longer boards, I mean, if I'm in my shop, I've got nobody to help me push it through the table saw. And then how the heck do you push 4 meters of 50 millimeter thick wood through a planer? How do you do that on your own? It's impossible to manage that. Well, then in that case, a router. But no, I don't even use a router. I use a track saw. Okay, that's my cheat code. I'm being dead serious. Set your track saw up properly, put your boards out in front of you, mark the front and the back of the board, cut that side, flip the board over, and then cut again. When you flip it back, then all those little patterns, like I was talking about, they all line up properly and you can start gluing them together. So most of the tables that I work with, that I make, the big tables, I cut them with a track saw. Don't even put it on the table saw. Don't even put it through the planer. It's too big. Okay, so I think you've got the idea. Does that make sense to you? For first cut and second cut, okay? All right, flatten the bowed surface. Okay, here's another good one. Well, look, if you want to thickness your wood, you can also do that with a router. It goes a little bit slower, but there you go. So you would plane your boards or panels flat with a straight bit and keep the depth uniform. Screw your router base to stretchers that ride on the rails. So there we go. It's something like a sled. So you would make a little sled with a rail, and there's a little crab section in there, and then you can move the router across, and once you've done that, move it up and then do it across, move it up, do it across, and so on. Just please don't sit there with a 1/2-inch bit on a big board. You want to get yourself a fairly nice diameter bit. So something like a 40 millimeter diameter. I see some of them are up to 52 millimeter diameter. Just remember, you just drop the speed of your router on that big, because that outside circumferential speed is going to be extremely high. So you need to drop the speed down on your router, probably take it down to about a number 2 speed with a big cutter, and then cut your tops. Okay, so you either make one or you buy one of those fancy bespoke ones that the guys use for the epoxy table scenarios, okay? And then set it up and flatten it. Okay, so there we go. You can do that kind of thing, all right? I've never done it. I just don't have a need for it. All right, smooth cuts on complex shapes, okay? So again, cutting shapes with a pattern bit has 2 advantages. So a pattern bit is a bit that has the bearing at the top. And why does it have it at the top? Because you have a pattern that you cut out, you attach the pattern, take your jigsaw first, cut off as much of the wood that you want to work with away, and leave about 3 millimeters. So get it as close to the pattern as you can. Or pencil out the pattern, take your jigsaw and cut as close to the line as possible. Just remember to move this way with your jigsaw. Why? Because when you're pushing, the blade flexes out that way. So that means on your piece of wood, you're cutting it out almost like this. If you move this way, you're flexing underneath. So when you have your template, it would have cut underneath it. So now when you're trying to clean with a pattern, you're going to have a cut out section underneath at the bottom. Does that make sense? So always move that direction around, so because the blade will always flex out like that. So it'll flex out like that and then cut. Then that's what you're going to remove with the router. So then put your template back on top again, tape it down, and then make your cut so that the bearing runs against the template and then cuts those pieces off. Okay, yes? You're pushing too hard. It's your fault, nobody else's. Say again? It will always flex that way. Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe the mechanism or something, but it always flexes out. I've never known one that flexes that way. So it's always that way. So if you've got a piece here, move the same way as you would with a router. Don't come and move in the opposite direction, because then it's going to flex underneath, and then you're going to mess that piece of wood up. Okay, it won't match. And you'll see the cuts come out underneath it. All right, so always be aware of that with the router. Some days I forget, and then I make because I'm also in a hurry, so I push a little bit harder. That's normally on thick wood. So the thinner woods, you don't see it that much, okay? But it's more exaggerated the thicker the wood is, okay? But you can test this theory. Go and practice it on cutting. Take a piece of, what's it, a 225 or whatever it is by 54, the thick wood, the pine wood. If you can get an offcut of that, try and cut through that. Push hard, and you'll see the when you cut across the grain, you'll see that it's created like a slope. And the slower you go through it, the straighter it cuts for you. And also the teeth, yes?
One question, are you always going to push a router and not pull?
You can pull. So if I wanted to, I could start there and then creep around the corner, and I could actually step back. The only thing is that stepping back, make sure everything behind you is clear. You know, you don't want to trip over something when you've got the router in your hand. Sometimes you're busy on this end of the table and you just want to do the last final cut. You can pull it towards you. Yeah, there's no problem in that. But as long as it follows the rules of which direction you should be moving. You wouldn't pull a jigsaw towards you. It wouldn't make sense. Okay, but all right, I think you got the idea. Yeah, all of a sudden a penny dropped there. Okay. All right, does that make sense? Cool. All right, so there you go. So there's the smooth cuts on complex shapes. So there, for example, so look, this is not uncommon. You know, if I get asked to make chairs or something for a client, I'll do the patterns up for the chair. And then normally what we do is we take a pine, and then we cut the patterns out in pine, and then we shape it and put the chair together and have a mock-up, and you can give it to your client and say, well, this is what it's more or less going to look like, and if they're happy with it, off you go. Then you take the pattern that you've created. In this case, they've screwed the pattern down. You can also double stick tape if you want to. Stick it down. And then you follow your router bearing, goes against the pattern, and then cuts. Again, have a look at this. Can you see it's quite thick? Those bits aren't that long. So how do you solve that problem now? Now you'll need to go and change your router bit to a one that's like that, with a bearing at the bottom. And then what you would do is you would then cut it. So the bearing will catch that you've cut from there, and it'll remove the other parts. You understand? So now you've got two types that you need to work with. Does that make sense to you? Yes? No? Maybe? No. I don't have a pattern bit. No, that's not a pattern. It's the same as what I've got. Pattern bit's got the bearing at the top. Yeah. So what you would do is you would use a pattern bit for the first step. So there's the bearing on the top. Okay? Goes into the router. Ah, there we go. There's a pattern bit. Okay, bearing at the top. So you use the pattern bit, and the pattern bit goes up against the pattern to cut out the pattern. So what it does is it can only go that far. Can you see? Now you still need to clean that part up, but it's too short. It can't get down to the bottom. So what you would need to do in that case is change the bit to that where the bearing is at the top. You would turn that around so it's up. I put this in your router. So what happens now, it'll catch that groove there, which is the original one that you made. It'll catch that one and clean off all the waste out of the way. Do you get the idea? There's two types of router bits, a pattern bit and a flush trim bit, or flush bit, okay? You would use these two to then in combination, all right. However, Axminster made router bits only in 1/2 inch. The longest one is, what's the longest Axminster bit? Straight cutter? Hardest? I think it was 75 millimeter. And in fact, I bought it because you wouldn't go thicker than that. Definitely wouldn't. So you can use that, but that's a straight cut. It's got no bearing on it. Now, in that case, you need to use a bushing for your template to make that cut. I think he's going to come and show me. All right, I hope that makes sense to you. Does that make sense? 63. Okay, so, but the longest one they've got is 75, isn't it? But they make a 75. 75, yeah. So that's quite a bit of a depth, but where are you going to work with wood that thick? Doesn't make sense, okay? But then you have to use a bushing. So what does that mean? A bushing, so let me explain to you what a bushing is. When you bought your router, inside your box was a little round thing that had a little pip on the center of it. Do you remember seeing something like that? And you looked at that and you said, oh, I don't know what this is, and you threw it back in the box. That's called a bushing. So what happens is that when you attach that to your router, the little part that sticks out underneath the bushing, that would bump up against the template, but there will be a distance away from the template when it makes the cut. Then you put your straight cutter in there and it goes through that little hole and then it trims. But the problem is it's a bit more difficult because now you must make your template that much smaller. So if it's 3 millimeters off from the, so when you got the router bit sticking through and the circle of your bushing, if it's a distance of 3 millimeters from the edge of the router to the outside of the bushing, you will need to make sure that you calculate that into your template, because now it's either going to be, or it's going to be 3 millimeters bigger than what your template is. So you either make the template smaller, or you decide, okay, 3 millimeters bigger, I'll live with that. It's not a problem. Okay, you've got to make a conscious decision. That's the bushings that you get. That's what that toy is. And it's for all the boxes that they throw the router, that bushing into. It's a 17 millimeter diameter bushing, and I have no answer as to why. Apparently Bosch started the trend with a 17 millimeter bushing, and everybody followed suit, and there's no answer for it, okay? And you can say to me, oh, it's a standard size. Nobody gave me an answer. Not even I spoke to Bosch, I spoke to Festool, I spoke to DeWalt, and they've all said to me, nobody knows. Okay, so maybe there is an answer out there somewhere, all right? Do you understand what I've explained to you? That's the main thing. Yes, Herman.
What do you use to do the actual template? What tool?
So that, okay, so the question is, what did I use, or what do you use to make the actual template? The actual template is basically handmade. Okay, so you've got to have hand tools to basically, so think of it like this, and I think you might relate to it a little bit easier. Think of yourself as a tool and die maker, where a guy would make the tool and die for the extrusion machines or whatever the case may be. That's exactly what you do. So you've got all these bits, these rasps and whatever, so that you make the whole thing and set it up. You've got these French curves to make the patterns, a French curve template. You use that to make these curves and square it up and whatever. Then you cut and make everything by hand. You should be skilled enough to do that. And then once you've made it and everything works properly, now you use it as a proper template. But today the answer is actually much easier. You go to a CAD package, you do it in CAD, and then you send it off to a CNC guy and he cuts all the patterns out for you. Isn't life amazing? No, but there's days where you're much quicker than actually taking it to a guy to do on CNC. You know, you can take a small piece and quickly make a little pattern and then get the thing done for you. But they're handy. They're definitely handy. Eh? It's worth using a CNC guy for things like that if you've got repetitives. Right, create trim easily. What's trim? If you have a look at, like this for example, can you see there's a frame around this wall? That would be known as trim, okay? It's a form of trim, okay? So in houses, your cornices, your dados and stuff like that, your dado rails and so on, those would be all part of trim, okay? So what you could do is maybe you need to work on something and make something or whatever the case may be. Then you need to make a profile. Then take it and make a particular piece of trim that you want to use inside the house. So if you need to replace a piece of trim, like a quarter round, for example, on the bottom of your skirtings, then get a quarter round bit and then make one. Okay, so some router bits or a combination of two bits can produce a trim profile for you. Rounded edges and coves are the easiest to match. A 12 millimeter roundover bit, for example, produces the perfect skirting molding, okay? So at the top of a skirting, I just finished a job off for another client, and it's amazing, the guy, they did the skirting. You know, you start realizing how bad the quality of tradesmen work in this country really is. The guy that had finished the skirtings, all he did was he just put a round over on the top, not a proper full quarter round to match all the other skirting. And I come along and I do my little section and I put the skirting down, and the skirting matches exactly what was in the house and lined up properly and squared up properly. And I'm thinking, gosh, man. So that's the type of thing you can sort out and do. So let's just have a look and see. This is a real situation as well. So have a look how it's done. You take a piece of wood and you first do the pattern or the molding. So you could take an ogee, a Roman ogee. Let me see if I've got one. Here we go. So you could take that and you can use that with there's a Roman ogee and an ogee. The Roman is more detailed and the ogee has got one cove less. Okay, they're both the same, yeah. Okay, no, that's a 45. But there's an idea. So if you take that bit in combination with a cove bit, no cove bit. Okay, let's just, for argument's sake, take a round over bit. Yeah, let's just say a round over. Take that round over. That round over with that. So 2 bits. You would then do the bottom part in the ogee and the top part with the round over. Then you're going to get that nice shapy cornice type effect that you see at the top. You can make that. I mean, you can make little things that go over the top of a frame. You make nice little fancy things. If you guys looked up with the stuff that I posted, I did a mirror a while back, and I put a fancy little thing at the top, like an architrave. I did that. It was a 2-step architrave that I did with a cove bit and 2 ogees. And 2 pieces of wood, and did the cove bit and the ogee, then a cove bit, an ogee again. So double ogee cove bit. But those 2 parts together, and it looks like part of the Colosseum. It's how you play around with your bits to get these different effects. So have a look at it. Those are things you can play with. So in this case, this is taking a piece of quarter round, so a 1/2-inch quarter round. First quarter round the wood, then put it through the table saw, and there you go. So if you want to have a quarter round for your house, that's exactly what you would do. So you would mill the material to 12 millimeters thick, and then put a round over of 12, a half-inch round over. So in other words, this big boy, put that on first, and then cut it off. Now you've got your skirting quarter round. Okay, so things like that you can play around with. Okay, or if you leave it just as it is, that's good enough for your skirting. Just make it 90 millimeters high. When you've worked with skirting, has anybody worked with skirting? What are the 2 grooves in the back of the skirting for? Say again? To stop it from warping. Yeah, airflow. So if there's moisture or humidity increases or decreasing, it's to prevent it from warping or pulling off from the wall. That's why you've got those 2 grooves at the back. So if you are going to replicate it, please remember to put 2 grooves in at least, just so there's got a bigger surface area to move moisture in and out. Okay? Alrighty. Good. Repair and reinforce cracks. Very simple one. I'm going to show you an idea that you can take back with you. When a tabletop or a chair splits, you might be able to glue the crack back together, but often the crack is too dirty, which I am very familiar with, and splintered to form a strong glue joint. All the guys have put no more nails in there to try and fix it up. It's criminal when they do that, because now you've got to sit there with this magnifier with a big bright spotlight and tweezers, and you've got to pick all that no more nails out to try and fix it up, to try and glue it back together again. And even with a good glue joint, the stresses that caused the split in the first place may crack it open again. So then how do you overcome this? Well, here's an idea. So if you take one, like a chair like this, one of these, what are they called? Not Windsor chairs. What is the name? I forget. Here's a Windsor chair, eh? Yeah. So yeah, for example, there's a crack in it. Turn it upside down. Groove a little square patch out of there. Take a piece of plywood, because plywood, there's no movement. Okay, it's stable. Put glue on it, clamp it together, and let's see if that crack will pull apart. If anything, it'll crack on the outsides where the piece of board is, if it does want to crack, if that makes any sense to you, okay? But there's a simple solution for you, okay? Do it underneath a table if you need to. I mean, normally we'd use bow ties or butterflies to fix up a table, to hold things together, cracks and whatever, and you call that a nice looking feature. But not everybody wants to see that on a tabletop, okay? All right, cut perfect arcs and circles. All right, so spiral bits. Okay, so I'm just introducing you to another type of router bit. This is called a spiral bit. So it's a solid piece of carbide. It's a beautiful bit. How do they compare in price? Well, for a straight cutter like this would probably cost you about 500, 600 Rand for that. But it'll give you a reasonably good cut. The spiral cutters They come in different types. You have a spiral upcut and a spiral downcut. Downcut compresses the wood downwards, and the spiral upcut pulls the chips out and disposes of them. Okay, so do the math. So when you make the cut, they make the smoothest, sweetest cuts you're ever going to get. Okay, there's still going to be chip out. So what happens is some clever guy made a spiral upcut, downcut bit. So what happens is it cuts down on the top part, so there's no splintering, and the bottom part is an upcut in a combination. So there's no splintering whatsoever. So when you finish the cut, you don't even have to touch it with sandpaper. You can basically just take it as it is, varnish it, and the job's done. Okay, go back to the original advert on the router. Okay, so the technology of the bits have taken us there. Right, they just say to us, you'll get better, less chipping. They're expensive. So if that's 500-600 rand, the equivalent is going to cost you about 3,000 rand in a spiral cutter. Okay, 3,000. So those things you don't want to just throw in a box together, because if they knock each other, they chip, and then you've got problems. Okay. Don't use a spiral bit that's smaller than 10 millimeter diameter. Spiral bits break easily when you're making deep cuts. So if anybody has a CNC, you'll know those little 3 millimeter bits that we work with, they snap for nothing. The little knot just says, I'm here, and the CNC says, don't worry, I'm going to take you on, and then they get to each other, and the knot says, but I told you it was here. And the CNC's there all in tears and it's broken. Okay, that little bit breaks and snaps for nothing. Okay, so just be aware of it. That's why I don't want a CNC machine. I'll subcontract it to somebody. They'll charge me money to do the job, but at least I get the job. If a 3,000 rand bit breaks on their hands, that's their problem. Okay, so don't be in a hurry to go the CNC route. I must be quite honest. All right, so there we go. So here's a scenario. So for a bar counter, for example, or maybe in a building you want to put a big semicircular architrave at the top and make it beautiful, and whatever the case may be. So initially what happened is it all started off with square pieces of wood, and then as you go along, combination of jigsaws and cutting and whatever the case may be, get a semi-arc, and then what you'll do is create a little trammel. There's your pivot point, put your router on the other end, and then you go around it and then cut this off until you've got a perfect semicircular shape. Okay, and then in that case, well, a spiral upcut bit, or downcut, either one, upcut would be the better one, would work perfectly. It'll get the job done nicely and quickly for you. Okay. Another nice thing about the carbide upcuts is there's no burning on the thing, no burn. So you can put the nice speed up on it, you can move it at a nice speed because it just removes the chips and throws them out, and there's nothing that's going to burn. Okay. So they work well for you. So there we go. So that's how you would do an arc, and I would suggest that you do use an upcut bit for that. Okay. All right. So ease of sharp edges with a round over bit. At the very beginning, you may remember that little strange looking router. I said it's permanently got a little round over bit in it, a 3 millimeter one. I use that. So what does it mean? It's when you have a sharp edge on a piece of wood, you use a round over on the edge. It eases that edge so it doesn't, tear or dent or whatever the case may be easily. That little round over just makes it a lot better. So the architectural guys call it an arris. We call it a round over. Some people might call it by another name, but those are the common names that it goes by. So if you're building furniture or installing trim, avoid leaving sharp edges on the wood because, like I said, it dents easily and it can crack or whatever. Put a little round over on it. Okay? Sharp edges also create weak spots in paint and other finishes, leading to cracking and peeling, especially outdoors. Fussy carpenters often ease the sharp edges with sandpaper or a file, or if you've got a block plane, you might be able to do it with a block plane quite easily. So if you know how to work with a block plane, it's a small hand plane, you normally have it in your apron, you take it out, you quickly just put a round over on with a block plane. It's quicker than getting a router out. It just works that quick, and it's much easier. But a 3 millimeter round over bit, like it's on the diagram, does the job more consistently and neatly. And these small profile bits are difficult to set at the correct cutting depth. So always test the cut. Now you know why mine stays permanently in the router. Because once you set it and go. But I do always, guys, seriously, I keep on telling people, please test what you're doing on scrap before you do it on your project. It doesn't matter. Even if I take my router out the box and I say, I've used it yesterday and it was perfect, it works perfectly. You know what? You're setting yourself up. Take a piece of scrap, just run it down and make sure it is set properly, because you could have bumped it, you could have knocked it or something, and it could have put it out. Okay, so you just want to make sure it is still okay. Always test. Somebody on the Hardware Center group was with the stain that they put on, that grip seal. Did anybody see it? Somebody posted something with regards to, I put that cabinet up And straight after the guy came up, he said, he had those watermarks on the tables. And then he sanded it down and he put that grip seal on, a very dark grip seal. I think it was teak or something. And the tables actually came out black. And I was just thinking to myself, but why did you not put it, sands underneath the table and test it to see if it was the right color? Because you've got nothing to work off. You can't test it on the furniture. You've got to do something. So underneath the table, please remember things like that. Eh? I mean, the color that I put on that cabinet, I tested at the bottom of the cabinet. Sanded it down and I tested the different colors over there. Then when I was finished, I had a bit of time. I just sanded it all off again. So there's a little bit of staining, but nobody's looking underneath the cabinet. So please remember to test everything that you work with, that it all works properly. Eh? All right, okay, does that make sense? Okay, there we go. Test on a piece of scrap. All right, round sharp wood edges, there we go. As you can see, anything that you do that's got a sharp edge, put a round over on it, okay? One of the nice things, if you're ever working with tables or table legs or whatever, put a little round over at the bottom of the leg where it stands on the floor, because when the guys pull it, if you leave it flush, it splinters and chips out and creates little splinters. Just do a round over so it doesn't splinter off. Yeah, they're just showing you, for example, do it on a door. Put the round over on the door so when you're over a carpet and you're opening and closing the door, it doesn't snag on the door. There's a good idea. So all the doors in my house where the carpets are, I've got the little round over on it, okay? So there you go. Try that out. Kevin, why are you late? Where's your shadow? No. Oh, the way you said it, it sounded like something different. Okay. Come and see me again if you enjoyed this session for some more lively, fun, and interactive action. Because on these advanced routing courses, I will introduce you to routing level 1, the basics. How to start up a router, how to fit a router bit, how to do some little simple tricks with a router. But please remember to bring your ear defenders with. And you can also bring your own router with if you want to. Once you've achieved level 1, you may proceed to level 2. There is no boss on level 1, but on level 2 there is a boss. There I'll teach you how to do circle cutting, template routing, and it's all practical. So very little of me talking and a lot of you working, which is lekker. I enjoy that part. Once you've met the boss, then you can proceed to router level 3. That's where I talk about the dark science of routers, and that's the bushings, okay? So router guide bushes, the theory and the practical. You can how to work with a box of them, with a box of router bits, how to do the calculation to work out what you want to do, and how to work with those bushings, okay? All right, that's the dark science. So if you're strong and like a proper PlayStation 5 game, once you've gone through the boss, you can go to router level 3 and then see if you can challenge yourself there, okay? Otherwise, folks, that's pretty much the story on the introduction to and theory to routing. If there's any questions that you have or anything you want to know, please come and ask me. I'm still here for a few minutes. I'm having a look at the time. Yeah, I'm here for a few minutes.
Just the difference between the fingers of different bits. Talk to what it is 6 and 12. What's the advantage, disadvantage of those?
Okay, so the bigger router, oh, you mean the router bits? Yeah. So the reason you use a bigger router bit is because there's more stability in the bit and you can cut bigger cuts with it, okay? So that's the reason why they have a big bit. If you take it and compare it to a 1/4 inch, you can see pretty much what the 1/4 inch and the 1/2 inch look like. So that's the 1/4 inch. Now look, you hear these horror stories where the guy said, oh no, the router bit bent. It doesn't do things like that. These things aren't meant for bending. If they break, they snap, and that's it. Do they go flying across the room? No, they basically just spin and drop. That's what they do. So they're not going to hit you like a bullet. None of that happens. But wear an apron, especially the men. You'll thank me. Okay, because something could happen. But yeah, that's the difference between the two. So these are big boys for big jobs to get the work done properly. Like I said on my one, if I put that bit in, it's quieter. It's easier to manage and move through the router. The bigger routers are normally a bigger powered router. And you can slide through the material that you think, did this do anything? And when you look at it, it actually made the cut. So you kind of know that it's a better option. I want to do the corners. I'm not going to use this little battery-operated Handheld to do oges around a table. I mean, for goodness sakes, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather take my 1/2-inch Bosch and then set it and then run around, drop it to the next depth, run it around, next depth, run it around. It's a much more pleasant experience than working with that little thing. That will do it, but then remember you're using that to do it with. Okay, so there's vibration, there's noise, it screams like a banshee, there's burning, there's all sorts of things that go with it. This is the way to go on a 1/2-inch. So the dovetails, for example, 1/2-inch. They now make them with a 1/4 inch, but you'll see the difference. You can actually hear it and see it. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Was there a difference between cutting working with things like MDF and pine, or you just couldn't?
Okay, so the question is there a difference between working with MDF and pine in general? On a router, not really. The major thing that you will pick up is that MDF is a more aggressive material, so it'll blunt the router a bit quicker. Pine is gummy, so it'll gum up the router a bit quicker. So generally speaking, whenever I'm finished, I normally inspect my router bits, and if I see any gum or anything attached to it or whatever, then I normally put it in a little container of, these hand cream plastic containers. They work well. I normally fill it up with clean green or crud cutter. My preference is actually crud cutter. I use that, and then I'll drop the bits in there, leave it for a couple of hours, come back with a nice little soft, well, I can't say soft, but a brass brush, and I just brush everything, inspect the thing, see if it's clean, and then you can get a little diamond card here that you just sharpen the front face, not the back of it. So the front face is this part here, and the back is where the slope is. Don't sharpen the back of it, just the front face, and just give it if there's any nicks on it, then more than likely won't be, but if it does produce any little nicks, then it'll tell you it's high-speed steel. Then you just give it a little bit of a lick with a diamond card, scrape a small file at least, and then just sharpen it up, and it's good to go for the next time. Okay. But you've chosen the two worst products to work with for a router. Okay. So pine for its gumminess, and MDF for its abrasiveness. Okay.
And then the second question, in terms of circle cutting, would you always need to use a spiral bit, or would you be able to get away with a straight?
No, you can use a straight bit. Straight bit will work for you. You start getting fancy with spiral upcut and downcut when you're doing, say for example, you're working with beech or oak, and these are expensive materials, and you really need to do a proper job and get things done efficiently. Then you start spending money on the better bits and so on. Okay, but yes, I've gone through the school of using non-spirals and ended up having to sand the stuff out and all of that. Then when you find out that the spiral upcut does a much better cut for you and a cleaner cut, then you start using that, because now you're saving time, and time is money. If that makes sense to you. But no, a general set will get you going for the most part. Teaches you how to overcome your challenges and problems you have until you get to the expensive tools. Then you know how to work with them properly. Okay, all expensive bits. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah. No, not really. If you put it through a piece of wood, have a look how it's cutting. If it's burning, then slow your speed down. If it's still burning, more than likely the cutter, or increase your speed to move it through. If it's still burning, then it's the cutter. But you're not going to do a finger test on it. Yeah, okay, so table saw, you will notice it when you, say for example, you're cutting, let me just use an example, 16mm wood, okay, thick wood. You cut it through when you've got a new blade, it just seems to slide through. And now after a couple of 100 meters of cutting wood, now you're getting to a point where you feel, geez, I've got to actually push to get this thing through. So then what you do is you go wax your table, thinking that's your table that's got resin on it, and it's slowing you down. So you wax your table up, and you start pushing the wood through, and you find out, hang on a minute, it's still the same. Your blade's gone blunt. Okay. And if there's burn marks on it, high probability that the blade's blunt. And you're trying to push this stuff through, and that's when accidents happen, is on blunt blades. Does that help?
Yeah, but then the difficulty is if you don't use it on a regular basis, 6 months later, you use it, make a different.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Buy yourself a new blade, and then 2 new blades. So when you use the one blade and you use it a couple of months later, put the new one in, feel how it goes, take that blade out, no, I'm talking nonsense. You know what? You'll know. If you've got to try and put a bit of energy to get stuff through a table saw blade, or the table saw, you'll know that your blade is going blunt. Okay. The same on your miter saw. When you're cutting on your miter saw, you'll actually feel it, and you look at the edge where you've cut it off. Either side will be burnt brown. Then you know your blade is a bit blunt. Well, you know, it might not. Cheers, Kevin. Your blade might not be blunt. It might be gunged up. So if you take the blade out and get yourself a paint tin lid, those big 20 litre or 25 litre drum lids, your blade will fit into the lid, that indentation. Fill that up with crud cut or clean green, let it soak, take a little nylon brush and clean it off and put it back in, and then push a piece of wood through. You'll probably find it's 1,000 times better. Okay, so it could be, check your blades. That's what I'm saying. After every time you've finished, at the end of the day, take the time out to check and clean everything and make sure it's fine, ready for the next day. Okay, all right, so that'll be your indicator. All right, good set of tools and bits are going to last much longer than a cheap set by any means. Okay, I've got drill bits that are still going strong after about 15 years, but they cost an absolute fortune for them. They're carbide, my drill bits, but those things are still sharp. I was amazed. I looked at it on, I think it was about Wednesday. I had a look at them. I thought, I can't believe these things are still going strong. They still do a good clean cut when they cut. They were worth the money. They were expensive at the time, but they were worth the money. Hey? Absolutely worth it. All right, anybody else? Does that help for the answer? Okay, anybody else? Yes. Oh, sorry, Nareen. You had a question? No. You had a question? Oh, okay, so it works like this. If you guys are interested, please register your interest on the group. Just say, I'd like to attend level 1, or when are you going to run a level 1 or level 2? Then we'll base it on the demand, and then we'll set a date and say, okay, those are the dates, and we'll run it. Okay. Very difficult to tell at the moment. Everybody's all over the place with, I'm surprised to see it this busy because it's the end of the month. So I think if it was middle, we might have been even more packed. Okay, that is my assumption. But yeah, we'll set it up. So just if you register, you're on the group, aren't you?
I put my number in the week, so I'm not on.
All right, okay, maybe we'll just run a poll and say anybody interested in the following, level 1, 2, and 3. Then just register your interest, and then we'll set the dates and advertise it. Okay, all right, we'll do it like that. All right, anybody else? Any other questions? Nobody? Okay, you all want to go? All righty, let's get to this point of the game. Okay, we've done that. Okay, you can go. All right, guys, okay, there we go. All right, well, thanks for coming along for the presentation. I hope it was of benefit and of use to you. A lot of talking, but some, thank you very much, thank you. Steve, you still here? Go, bye, Steve. Internet world, thank you for attending. You guys didn't ask much questions. You're a perfect audience. Take care and have a good weekend. And for the rest of you guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. We'll see you at the other ones. Any questions you want to talk to me afterwards, come and see me. Bye. All righty. Cheers, Steve. Take care. Look after yourself, my mate. Right. Herman, please send me a WhatsApp in terms of what I owe you. Sorry, man.
I will do. Yeah. Question on that cabinet of mine.
Yeah.
You have a piece of paper. I just want to show you what I've tried to do.
I have a piece of paper, but I don't have a pencil. I just do not have a pencil. Oh, here we go.
What I thought it was a foreign. Okay, so I'll put then run a piece there. Come back down and like that. Okay, and then slots through there. Okay, so now that will be 150 more. And that'll be 150 more. So now I've got 300 millimeters. How do I get that middle cabinet to 800?
To
Or do I
eight?
make that middle cabinet or the drawer cabinet just 300, 500?
Yeah, 500. Make it 500. That'll be easier.
The drawers I'll have to make smaller.
Slightly shorter, yeah. Just go to 450.
Because that to me will be fine, and then I can just put a back of there and a top and a
Thanks,
bottom.
son. Just take it to 450.
Yeah, when I top, I'll go 25 mil, and the bottom I'll go 25
Yeah,
mil.
perfect.
And the back it will just be an ordinary,
Or leave it open if nobody's looking at it.
yeah.
Okay, that'll work.
Okay.
Please send me a WhatsApp and remind me.
Abandoned box series and I ain't working.
Oh gosh, I've never worked with it.
No, it's